Chapter 1141. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin. Did she really look like someone who would abandon someone after using them? It looked like she really should get married to Yun Xiao first. But what made her feel helpless was that she still didn't know where Yun Xiao was. Master, you've already eaten Yun Xiao clean. Don't be the kind of beast that old master described you to be, who pulls up his pants and ignores people. If Yun Luofeng had met another man, he wouldn't have been so nervous. But the man in front of him was too strong. He was so strong that he couldn't see through his strength. How could he not be worried for Yun Xiao? What if this man took advantage of Yun Xiao's absence to steal from Master? As Yun Xiao's loyal protector, he had to remind Master at all times not to be bewitched by this flirtatious slut. After all, a good man like Yun Xiao was really extinct. Yun Luofeng didn't pay attention to Xiao Mo. Instead, he was thinking that the next time he met Yun Xiao, he must get married first. Otherwise, everyone would think that she was the kind of beast that would pull up her pants and ignore people. Thinking about Yun Xiao's cold and perfect face, Yun Luofeng's lips couldn't help but curve slightly. After not seeing him for a few months, she really missed him. I wonder how Yun Xiao is doing recently, on another mainland. In a valley somewhere, a man seemed to feel the longing from afar. He raised his head and gazed at the azure sky. His cold face gradually melted and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. It's been almost a month. Based on Qin Yuan's speed, he should be reaching the continent of no return soon. In a luxurious mansion, a group of lavishly dressed maids rushed out when they saw Ji Zhoutian return. In an instant, they served tea and massaged his shoulders and back in one go. The division of labor was clear. Ji Zhoutian took the tea from the maid and took a small sip. He frowned and smashed the teacup in his hand on the ground. He spat out the tea in his mouth. Who brewed the tea today? There were too few tea leaves, it wasn't bitter enough. There was one less step in the brewing process, it wasn't fragrant enough. Also, who allowed you to boil the tea leaves from yesterday? I only drink fresh tea leaves. The maidservants were so frightened that they all knelt on the ground, trembling. Reporting to Master, the master in charge of brewing tea has temporarily returned to his hometown. This one has just been hired, so she has made a mistake. Please forgive her, Master. Forget it. I have a good temperament today, so I'll let him go. Ji Zhoutian relaxed his brows. Steward, send someone to tidy up the wing next to my room and arrange for Miss Yun to move in. Hearing this, the servant girls wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads. The master loved to drink tea. Every day, the first thing he did when he returned to the residence was to taste tea. However, the master was exceptionally picky. If he was dissatisfied with something, it wouldn't be as simple as a punishment. But why did Master let go of that tea maker so easily today? Was it because of the young lady that his master had brought back? The maidservants glanced at Yun Luofeng out of the corner of their eyes, and their eyes were filled with amazement. They had never seen such a beautiful woman before. Standing together with their master, they could truly be described as a perfect match, peerless in this world. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Ji Zhoutian, do you like to drink tea? Tea and wine, I can't do without either. Ji Zhoutian said arrogantly. Yun Luofeng smiled and didn't say anything else. He followed the steward. Qin Yan and the others also hurriedly followed beside Yun Luofeng, walking quickly towards the residence. Chapter 1142. It was night. The night was dark like water. Yun Luofeng had just pushed the door open when she saw Ji Zhoutian sitting in her room. He was holding a small wine glass in his hand and gently swirling it. Don't you know that there is a difference between men and women? What are you doing in my room in the middle of the night? She leaned against the door frame and looked at the man sitting in the room with a faint smile on her face. The man's clothes were half open, revealing his snow-white and attractive skin. Under the moonlight, his skin emitted a seductive light. It had to be said that this man really had the capital to charm people. Every frown and smile revealed his seductive nature. "Is there a problem with your hand?" Ji Jotian glanced at Yun Luofeng's right hand and raised his eyebrows. Yun Luofeng was stunned and subconsciously touched her palm. The smile on her face did not diminish. "That day, because I forcefully increased my strength, it caused my right hand to be crippled." If her right hand had only been seriously injured and crippled, with her medical skills, she would have been able to cure it 100%. However, this was the result of forcefully increasing her strength. "Even little Mo might not have a way to cure it. I know something that can cure your arm." Ji Jotian glanced at Yun Luofeng. "The sacred water of the Sacred Maiden clan can reconstruct your tibia. Your arm can also be healed without treatment." Sacred water. Yun Luofeng was stunned. Hearing these two words, she suddenly remembered the sacred water that she had obtained from Lin Ruobai's father. They were both sacred water, but she knew clearly that the sacred water in her hands did not have the ability to reconstruct tibia. "Where is the Sacred Maiden clan?" Yun Luofeng asked with a frown. "Aren't there people from the Sacred Maiden clan by your side?" Ji Jotian slowly stood up and smiled evilly. "That's all I have to say. If you want to cure your arm, you can only rely on your own efforts. I won't help you." He would only provide her with clues, but he would not help her. Yun Luofeng was just about to ask when Ji Jotian's figure disappeared into thin air. In the quiet room, only the sound of the night breeze could be heard. As for the seductive man who had just been sitting in the room, it was as if he had never appeared. "Little Mo, what is the origin of this Sacred Maiden clan?" Yun Luofeng gently stroked her chin and pondered for a while before asking. After a long time, Little Mo's voice came from his soul. "I've heard of the Holy Maiden tribe before. It's a very mysterious tribe. Anyone who was selected to enter the Sacred Maiden tribe was not allowed to marry. In the past, the Sacred Maiden tribe was very powerful. I don't know what the situation of the Sacred Maiden tribe is now, but I can tell you clearly that the Sacred Maiden tribe is not in the continent of No Hui. Little Mo, he said that someone from the Sacred Maiden tribe is beside me. Do you know who he is talking about?" "This." Little Mo hesitated for a moment. "Master, if you want to cure your arm, you don't necessarily need the holy water of the Sacred Maiden tribe. I have other ways to help you as long as you give me time. In this world, there is nothing I can't do." Little Mo's voice was full of confidence. He clearly did not want Yun Luofeng to have dealings with the Sacred Maiden tribe. Yun Luofeng naturally understood the meaning behind his words. He smiled and said, "You don't want me to go find the Holy Maiden tribe?" "Yes," Little Mo answered honestly. "Those people from the Sacred Maiden tribe are very inexplicable. If they take a fancy to you and want you to join the Sacred Maiden tribe, what will happen to Yun Shao?" "Master, give me some time. I'll think of something. I will never let you deal with those people." Chapter 1143. As the doctor's meet was being held in the Chancellor's palace, the entire Chancellor's palace was bustling with noise and excitement. Yun Luofeng had just walked into the main hall of the Chancellor's palace when he saw Lin Yu, who was beaming from ear to ear. Lin Yu also saw Yun Luofeng. A vicious glint flashed across his eyes and his lips curled into a mocking smile. "Yun Luofeng, I never thought that you would dare to come here. Since you're now in my territory, you'll soon have no response from heaven or earth." He gritted his teeth in hatred. Thinking about what Yun Luofeng had done to him, he wanted to tear her to pieces. Unfortunately, Yun Luofeng was holding on to the invitation, so he could not chase this woman out. Yun Luo Feng. Just then, a cold voice rang out from beside Yun Luo Feng. As he turned his head, he saw a woman dressed in green walking towards him. This woman couldn't be considered a devastatingly beautiful woman, but she gave off an exceptionally comfortable feeling. Her beauty was a little special, and her fine black hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall. She had a friendly and polite smile on her face, and her eyes were bright and full of expression. Qing Mu glanced at the woman walking towards Yun Luo Feng and said in a low voice, "She's Princess Qing Shuang from the Flowing Moon Empire." Who would have thought that she would also participate in this doctor's conference? Princess Qing Shuang. Yun Luo Feng was stunned for a moment before he remembered who this Princess Qing Shuang was. She had sent someone to congratulate him on his second uncle's wedding. That was how Yun Luo Feng had found out about the legendary Princess Qing Shuang. Princess Qing Shuang smiled. "That day, I wanted to see you personally, but something came up and I could only send someone. I hope you don't mind." She paused for a moment before continuing, "This time, I knew that you would definitely come to participate in the doctor's conference, so I also came here to see you." "See me?" Yun Luo Feng raised his eyebrows and his lips curled into a smile. "Why do you want to see me?" Princess Qing Shuang smiled. "I just want to know what kind of person the woman who was in the limelight at the international competition is. Now that I've met her, she's exactly what I imagined." Just as the two of them were talking, a laugh came from the side. "Princess Frost, I didn't expect you to see Miss Yun first. I'm still one step behind you." As soon as he finished speaking, the man walked out from behind the crowd. He was dressed in a brocade robe, looking handsome and confident. His eyes were full of smiles. "Your Majesty Anlan." Greenwood nodded towards Anlan. Anlan nodded and turned his gaze to Yun Luo Feng. "Miss Yun, long time no see." He had a smile on his face as his gaze fell on Yun Luo Feng. This man was the Prince of the Peerless Empire, Anlan, whom he had met in the International League tournament. At the same time, he was also the one who helped Qing Mu and the others escape from the Tianhui Empire. To be honest, Yun Luo Feng did not have much feelings for Anlan. In comparison, Princess Frost made her feel more comfortable. "Everyone, welcome to the medical conference organized by my family." Lin Yu coughed dryly and cleared his throat before saying, "I'll be holding the medical conference for everyone and I'll be distributing the fruit of the soul to everyone at the end." In other words, he was the one who could make the decision for this medical conference. Yun Luo Feng and Ji Zhoutian had offended him, so they would never be able to get the fruit of the soul in this lifetime. Chapter 1144. The funny thing was, he still didn't know the reason. The reason why he could host this medical conference was because of Ji Zhoutian's secret. It was precisely because he knew nothing. That was why he made an irreparable mistake in the end. Our Ji clan's clan leader respects doctors the most. That's why he held this medical conference this time around. His goal is to unearth peerless geniuses from doctors. However, if he doesn't care about the matters of the outside world, as long as you are a doctor, you will receive an invitation from him. As a result, some people will be able to sneak through and participate in the medical conference with that kind of virtue. As Lin Yu spoke, his eyes kept drifting towards Yun Luo Feng. Clearly, the person he was talking about was Yun Luo Feng. Everyone's eyes turned towards Lin Yu in unison when they recalled his fight with Yun Luo Feng on the street. Their eyes were filled with sympathy and pity. Offending Lin Yu is equivalent to offending the Ji family. This young girl's days from now on will not be easy. What? Did you offend someone from the Ji family? Anlan raised his eyebrows and looked at Yun Luo Feng with a faint smile. It seems that you really get into trouble easily. First, you offended the Tianhui Empire in the tournament, and now you offended the Ji family here. It seems that no matter where you go, you will make a group of enemies. Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders, his face filled with helplessness. I don't want to be enemies with anyone, but this group of people just likes to find me. Her voice was neither soft nor soft, and it fell right into everyone's ears. Lin Yu grew increasingly furious as he glared daggers at Yun Luofeng. In the eyes of those who did not know the truth, they would think that Yun Luofeng had an irreconcilable blood feud with him. At this moment, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone's gaze turned towards the door, towards the man with peerless elegance. This man was so beautiful that it made people's hearts beat faster. There was a cinnabar dot between his eyebrows, and he was extremely enchanting. His clothes were half open, and his snow-white skin was like white jade that emitted a pure white light. It was extremely dazzling. In the hall, the eyes of the unmarried women were filled with amazement. They stared at the peerless man like hungry wolves. If it weren't for the fact that they wanted to maintain their composure, they might have already pounced on him. The man ignored everyone's gaze and walked to Yun Luofeng's side. Why didn't you wait for me? His long and narrow eyes stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng as he asked. Yun Luofeng smiled. Why should I wait for you? Ji Jotian's voice suddenly disappeared. Helplessness could be seen on his beautiful face. He did take her in, but she came to participate in the doctor's conference without saying a word, completely abandoning him. All the women glared angrily at Yun Luofeng when they saw the interaction between the two. Their eyes were filled with jealousy and hatred. His expression was like he wished he could stare 2 holes into Yun Luofeng's face. Let's see how she can seduce men in the future. Lin Yu's expression is very ugly. She glared coldly at Yun Luofeng and Gu Ruoyun before turning away. The corners of her lips curled into a mocking angle as she said, Today, the Ji family has invited all of you to participate in the medical conference. I hope that unrelated people can leave as soon as possible. He didn't say this to Yun Luofeng. Instead, he looked at the gorgeous Ji Jotian. Yun Luofeng had the invitation in his hand, and he was helpless. Could it be that he couldn't chase this man away? No matter how strong he was, he didn't have the guts to go against the Ji family in public. Chapter 1145. Ji Jotian raised his lips into a smile. He flicked his sleeves and sat down in front of everyone. His enchanting red robe fluttered in the breeze. He supported half of his face with his fist, and there was an indescribable charm between his slightly raised eyebrows. Today, I will stay here. I want to see who dares to leave with me. The man's voice was wild and domineering. His sharp gaze slowly swept across the crowd before finally landing on Lin Yu. He raised his brow and said, You're just a little ant, yet you have the audacity to act so insolently in front of me. I am from Ji clan. Lin Yu straightened his neck and said unyieldingly, If you attack me, you'll be making an enemy out of the Ji family. Are you really not afraid of death? Ji family. Ji Jotian smiled. If not for the fact that he wanted to leave this old man for Yun Luofeng, perhaps he would have already made him bleed on the spot. You can scare me just by moving out of Ji family. The man slightly raised his slender hand. At that moment, Lin Yu felt his breathing stagnate. It was as if the man could strangle him to death with just a raise of his hand. Get lost and host the meeting. The man's red lips parted and his voice was incomparably domineering. In fact, it was clear that he did not place the Ji family in his eyes at all. Everyone was shocked. They were all trying to guess what kind of identity this man had to be able to make him say such arrogant words. Lin Yu glared at Ji Jotian resentfully and walked to his seat. But before he could sit down, he was interrupted by the man's cold and arrogant voice. Get lost. Lin Yu paused in his steps and turned to glare at the man angrily. What else do you want? That's my position. You don't have the right to do it. The corners of Ji Jotian's lips curled up into a bloodthirsty smile. A streak of blood-red light flashed across his black eyes for a moment before disappearing. Don't go overboard. Lin Yu was so angry that her entire body was trembling. This is the Ji family's territory. The Chancellor's residence in the Spirit City had already been bought by the Ji family for the sake of today's medical event. Hence, in Lin Yu's mind, the highest seat in the hall should naturally belong to him. You're not worthy. Those 3 arrogant words caused Lin Yu's face to turn deathly pale. He had only been humiliated twice in his life. The first time was in the medical tower. He had been chased out of the medical tower by Yun Luofeng in front of everyone. The second time was now. Without waiting for Lin Yu to recover from his rage, the man flicked his sleeves and rose to his feet. His figure was like a ray of red light as he instantly appeared on the high seat. Her red robe was extremely enchanting and stunning. His hand was still supporting his head. His long and narrow eyes flashed with a blood-red light as he slowly opened his mouth under everyone's gaze. I'm just here to join in the fun. You guys continue. I'll just watch and won't say anything. The pressure that this man gave off was too strong. Under this kind of pressure, they couldn't help but sweat profusely. No one actually dared to open their mouths. The entire hall was so quiet that only the sound of his breathing could be heard. Lin Yu clenched his fists tightly as he sat down on the lower seat unwillingly. A vicious glint flashed across his cold eyes. After the meeting ended, the patriarch would appear, and as long as the patriarch appeared, it would be the time of this man's death. It was better to let him have his way for now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the medical event organized by the Ji family. Lin Yu smiled insincerely as he said, the Ji family has set up countless questions for the sake of this meeting. Those questions have been pasted on the wall and you can answer them later on. The more questions you answer, the more likely you are to become the cream of the crop. Chapter 1146. He paused before he continued, of course, to prevent anyone from answering the questions incorrectly, the Ji family will be testing the questions at the end. If you answer more than 2 questions incorrectly, it will be judged as a failure. I hope that everyone can answer the questions accordingly. As he spoke, a smile appeared on Lin Yu's face. These questions were extremely difficult and not many people could answer them. Hence, they could not answer the questions incorrectly. If they answered more than 2 questions incorrectly, it would be judged as a failure. So what if Yun Luofeng's medical skills were superb? As long as he judged her as a failure, she would not be able to obtain the fruit of the soul. Ha ha ha. Lin Yu laughed maniacally in his heart at the thought of this, and the vicious light in his eyes deepened. Yun Luofeng, this is the price you have to pay for chasing me out of the medical tower. If you had knelt down and apologized yesterday, perhaps I would have forgiven you. Yet you insist on being so arrogant. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. Once Lin Yu had spoken, the doctors rushed towards the white wall in a race against time. At that moment, the walls were plastered with questions. When they saw the questions, the crowd fell silent and frowned in deep thought. Miss Yun, Qing Shuang glanced at Yun Luofeng with a deep smile on her willowy brows. I look forward to your performance. If it had not been for the sake of meeting Yun Luofeng, he would not have rushed over from the Flowing Moon Empire. At the same time, he believed that Yun Luofeng would not disappoint him. When she saw that everyone had walked towards the wall, Yun Luofeng followed suit. She picked up a pen and wrote down the answers to the questions on a piece of paper. She answered the questions swiftly and smoothly. Very soon, she had already answered one question and moved on to the next one. The quiet hall grew even quieter. Those who were deep in thought turned to look at Yun Luofeng with astonishment in their eyes. Where did this young lady come from? Why can she answer the questions without even thinking? I think I've heard of her. She seems to be the pagoda master of the medical tower. Legend has it that there are many books in the medical tower that have never existed on this mainland. Hence, it's not surprising that she could answer these questions. The crowd whispered to each other and discussed animatedly. A moment later, someone returned to his senses and hurriedly said, "Hurry up, there's not much time left. If we try our luck, we might be able to answer one or two questions." If it was delayed until the afternoon, Yun Luofeng would have answered all the questions, according to the rules of the conference, no matter whether the answer was right or wrong, as long as she wrote it down, no one else could continue to answer. Thus, after this person's topic ended, everyone began to race against time, picking up their pens and writing on the paper. Time ticked by. Dusk fell. The sunset glow filled the sky. After an unknown period of time, all the questions were finally answered. Lin Yu gently stroked his chin as he casually scanned through the answers. The more he looked, the uglier his expression became. The questions that Yun Luofeng answered were written in a fair and detailed manner. There were no problems at all. There wasn't even a single typo. However, these questions had all been discussed by countless elders of the Ji family. Yun Luofeng's brain didn't even move, and he wrote it down smoothly. How much knowledge did she have in her brain to be able to do this? No. No. He absolutely could not let Yun Luofeng win. Chapter 1147. It was a good thing that the Ji family had only sent him to host the competition this time and there were no other elders present. As long as he determined that Yun Luofeng's answer was wrong, who would dare to say otherwise? Cough, cough. Lin Yu coughed dryly and cleared his throat. He then said with a gloomy look on his face, "It's almost time. Everyone, put down your pens. I'll check your answers now." He placed his hands behind his back and pretended to walk forward. His eyes scanned the questions on the paper one by one. Princess Frost, you've answered a total of 5 questions. The accuracy rate is 100%. Your Highness and Lan, you've answered a total of 5 questions but you've written one wrong. The accuracy rate is 80%. Lin Qi, you've answered a total of 3 questions. Lin Yu glanced at the questions that the crowd had answered and came up with the answers one after another. In the end, he had reported the names of all the people who had answered the questions except for Yun Luofeng. He had not heard her name from his lips. Yun Luofeng was not anxious. Her beautiful face was calm and a demonic light flashed in her smiling, black eyes. She leaned lazily against a pillar as she stared at Lin Yu's sinister expression with a forced smile. Lin Yu sensed her gaze and instinctively glanced at her. He then smiled icily and said, "Yun Luofeng, you've answered 20 questions." 20 questions had surpassed the total answers of the rest. In an instant, everyone raised their heads and looked at Yun Luofeng. Compared to the outcome of the competition, they were more interested in knowing how accurate Yun Luofeng's answers were. As the crowd waited anxiously, Lin Yu continued to speak and slowly said, "The accuracy rate is 90%. Boom! The crowd was in an uproar. In an instant, the crowd's eyes changed from curiosity to shock as if they could not believe Lin Yu's words. The accuracy rate is 90%. Is this the accuracy rate and not the accuracy rate? Does this mean that out of the 20 questions, she has answered 18 of them incorrectly? I've long known that this woman is just an embroidered pillow. She's completely useless." A woman scoffed and glanced at Yun Luofeng disdainfully. "What's the point of her answering so many questions? Aren't they all wrong?" The woman's voice was filled with jealousy. She was clearly enraged because of Ji Zhoutian and Yun Luofeng's previous relationship. Therefore, her words were equally blunt. "Yun Luofeng, I never thought that your medical skills would be this trashy." Lin Yu raised his head and spoke disdainfully, you clearly don't know anything yet you pretend to be knowledgeable. You didn't even think before writing down so many answers. If you're not trying to fool me, then what are you? I advise you to go back to your mother's womb and start anew so that you don't embarrass yourself outside. At a time like this, no one doubted Lin Yu's words. After all, in their hearts, Lin Yu does not have the guts to put on a show in front of everyone. What's more, they had all seen Yun Luofeng's speed as he wrote the answers. If she didn't write nonsense, how could she have such speed? Ji Zhoutian narrowed his long and narrow eyes as he looked at the girl in white with a smile on his lips. He did not think of helping Yun Luofeng out of this predicament. Instead, he wanted to know how she would prove herself. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up as he looked at Lin Yu with a half-smile. Are you sure that I've answered 18 questions incorrectly? That's right. Lin Yu raised his head and puffed out his chest. I have a set of correct answers in my hands. I compared them and came to this conclusion. Chapter 1148. Yun Luofeng extended his hand towards Lin Yu. What do you want? Lin Yu glared at Yun Luofeng coldly as he asked impatiently. Answer. Yun Luofeng said with a smile. Lin Yu's expression changed and he pointed at his head. My answer is already in my head. Since that's the case, what evidence do you have to prove that my answer is wrong? Yun Luofeng's smile was lazy and evil. Who can prove that you're not abusing your position to avenge a personal grudge? Ha! Lin Yu laughed maniacally. Avenge a personal grudge. If I, Lin Yu, wanted to deal with you, I don't need to do it on such an occasion. What ability do you think you have to compete with the Ji family? As long as I give the order, you will die here. However, I, Lin Yu, have always repaid evil with good. No matter how cruel you are to do to me, I would never stoop to fighting a girl like you. His words were filled with righteousness, and when they fell into the ears of others, Yun Luofeng impressively became a narrow-minded person. On the other hand, even if he was humiliated by Yun Luofeng in front of everyone, he was not willing to argue with a woman. I will only ask you one thing. If I can prove that I did not answer these 18 questions incorrectly, then what are you willing to pay? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. A dangerous light flashed across his black pupils. She lifted her chin slightly, revealing her arrogant nature. That's impossible. My judgment can't be wrong. If you can really prove that there's no problem with your answer. In that case, I'll kneel and kowtow to you a few times, said Lin Yu as he shook his head. Proof? How could she prove it? In this medical conference, he was the only one who could make decisions. Why would he be afraid of a little girl? Actually, if you want to prove it, it's very simple. Yun Luofeng raised the corner of his mouth, his smile sinister. Before Lin Yu could react, the young girl suddenly raised her leg and sent him flying with a kick. You! Lin Yu raised his head in anger but saw that the young girl was already in front of him. She stepped on his chest with one foot and took off the space ring on his finger from above. Her demonic gaze was filled with coldness, making him shudder. Remove the restriction on the spatial ring. Lin Yu's face turned pale in an instant and panic appeared in his eyes. What are you trying to do? This spatial ring contains my many years of treasures. I definitely can't give it to you. Men, quickly seize this woman for this old man. Lin Yu never imagined that Yun Luofeng would have the guts to attack him in public. He had underestimated her. Immediately, all the guards of the Ji clan pulled out their weapons and were about to rush towards Yun Luofeng. Miss Yun, don't worry and deal with him. Leave the rest of the Ji family to my flowing moon empire. At this time, Princess Qing Shuang stood on Yun Luofeng's side without hesitation, blocking all the people from the Ji family. Anlan smiled. Princess Frost has already made a move. how can I turn a blind eye to it? Others may be afraid of the Ji family, but our peerless empire has never been afraid. He slowly walked towards Princess Qing Shuang with a smile on his handsome face. If you want to get close to Miss Yun, you must first defeat the experts of the peerless empire. In an instant, a few figures flew over from afar and stood behind Lan. Those people stared coldly at the people of Ji family. Lin Yu's face was ashen as he asked, Yun Luofeng, are you really not afraid of the Ji family? I've heard. Yun Luofeng smiled and did not answer his question. When a spatial ring changes owners, either the original owner must remove the restriction or the original owner must die. Once you die, I will be able to retrieve the items in the spatial ring. Chapter 1149. Murderous intent surged from the young girl's body as she spoke and surrounded Lin Yu. Lin Yu could clearly sense that Yun Luofeng's murderous intent had been triggered. This woman has no regard for the Ji family at all. Furthermore, in her eyes, his own life was nothing more than a trifling matter. Lin Yu had no choice but to remove the restriction on the space ring as he glared hatefully at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng raised her hand and a scroll appeared in her palm. She handed the scroll to Qing Shuang and raised her brow. Please help me check my answers. Qing Shuang saw that Yun Luofeng had taken the scroll out of Lin Yu's ring and was shocked when she heard her words. A sense of understanding flashed across her eyes and she quickly walked towards the wall. She opened the scroll and looked at the answers Yun Luofeng had written. The more she looked at it, the more shocked she became and the uglier her delicate face became. 20 answers. All correct. She was 100% correct. It was no wonder that Qing Shuang's expression was so ugly. Lin Yu had cheated too much. Yun Luofeng had clearly answered all the questions correctly and were even more detailed than the answers on the scroll. However, he had judged her to be 90% wrong. How could Qing Shuang, who had always abhorred evil, tolerate this? Following the initial shock, the crowd was once again greatly shocked. All 20 answers are correct. Why would Lin Yu judge her to have 18 errors? He's clearly abusing his position to avenge a personal grudge. How could the Ji family's general meeting be so lax? At that moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Yu's face. No one had expected Lin Yu to have the audacity to cheat under these circumstances. Hee hee. Lin Yu laughed icily and slowly rose to his feet. He flicked the dust off his robes as a disdainful light flashed in his eyes. Yun Luofeng, so what if you've answered the questions correctly? I have the final say on the fruit of the soul. If I don't give it to you, you'll never get it. He has no regard for Yun Luofeng at all. With the Ji family's protection, why would he need to fear a tiny tower of medicine? Thump. Yun Luofeng raised his leg once again and kicked Lin Yu in the chest. She had used an extremely great amount of strength in that kick. The crowd could only hear the sound of bones breaking. Soon after, the elderly figure was sent flying and landed miserably on the ground. He spat out mouthfuls of blood and stared at Yun Luofeng with bloodshot eyes. Silence. The entire hall was silent, not a sound could be heard. Everyone stared at Yun Luofeng, their eyes filled with astonishment. Although Lin Yu had cheated, he was still a member of the Ji family. Yun Luofeng actually dared to directly attack him. Lan shook his head and smiled helplessly. It was the same back in the International League tournament. She never let herself suffer any losses. Whoever makes her suffer, she'll get it back 1,000 times over. Qing Shuang didn't speak and just stared at Yun Luofeng quietly. Her eyes flickered with a faint light, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Perhaps he had not misjudged him, this girl was very special. Yun Luofeng. You'll die a horrible death. Lin Yu gritted his teeth and spat hatefully. You won't have a good ending in the future. I'm afraid you won't know whether I'll have a good ending or not. Yun Luofeng's foot was on Lin Yu's chest as she lowered her eyes to look at him. She then said with a forced smile, Lin Yu, I've given you a chance but you insist on making me your enemy. I, Yun Luofeng, have to suffer anything in this lifetime but I will never suffer losses. Chapter 1150. Her slightly raised brows were arrogant and confident as she proclaimed in a domineering manner. In this lifetime, she would suffer from anything but losses. Ji Jiutian leaned his head as his narrow, almond-shaped eyes sparkled. A seductive smile hung on his coquettish face. He lifted his snow-white chin in a domineering and wild manner. The women around them glanced lustfully at his peerless face from time to time. Ji Jiutian did not seem to notice anything as his almond-shaped eyes continued to stare at Yun Luofeng. The interest in his eyes grew stronger and the smile on his lips grew wider. Yun Luofeng, I'm from the Ji family. Lin Yu mentioned the Ji family in an attempt to remind Yun Luofeng that if he were to die in her hands, the Ji family would not let her off so easily. However, Yun Luofeng continued to slowly approach Lin Yu. Her deep, dark eyes were calm as a cold and evil smile hung on her peerlessly beautiful face. At this moment, Lin Yu felt that Yun Luofeng was like the Grim Reaper who had crawled out of hell and could reap his life at any time. Do you still remember what you've said? If you prove that my answer is correct, kowtow and admit your mistake. Lin Yu gritted his teeth. Dream on. Thump. He had just climbed to his feet when Yun Luofeng's leg turned and kicked the back of Lin Yu's leg. Lin Yu was caught off guard and knelt in front of Yun Luofeng with a thud. The pain caused him to break out in a cold sweat. Seeing that you've knelt down, I can spare your life. Yun Luofeng raised his chin and said condescendingly, however, in order to prevent you from finding trouble with me in the future, I will cripple your strength. Lin Yu raised his head in shock and looked at the smiling young girl. A chill crept into his heart. No! He screamed in his heart and hurriedly turned around and ran out of the hole. Now, his heart was filled with regret. Why had he not brought some powerful cultivators with him? Otherwise, he would not have fallen into Yun Luofeng's hands. Perhaps Lin Yu would never have imagined that Ji Jiutian had purposely sent him a group of weak guards for the sake of putting on a show. The master of the Ji family has arrived. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice chimed in from outside the governor's mansion. Upon hearing this voice, Lin Yu's expression changed from his initial panic to pleasant surprise. He stopped in his tracks and laughed maniacally. The patriarch is here. Yun Luofeng, you're dead for sure this time. Ji Jiutian frowned and stared coldly at the man who walked into the city governor's mansion. His long and narrow eyes were filled with anger. Tian Luo, who was hiding in the dark, could not help but break out in cold sweat. Why is the patriarch here? It's over. The family head must have angered the master this time. If the master gets angry, the master might even cripple the family head in a fit of anger. At this moment, a man in a green robe slowly walked in from outside the courtyard that was enveloped by the sunset glow. The man was tall and had a feminine appearance. His skin was as beautiful as jade, and his lips were as red as blood. If it wasn't for his slightly protruding Adam's apple, no one would have thought that he was a man. Compared to Ji Jiutian's bewitching beauty, this man gave off a gentle and beautiful feeling. He led a group of people behind him and walked into the hall in a mighty manner. Of course, the master of the Ji family was named Ji Lan. She was intelligent and had the spirit of a woman. The master of the Ji family. Heavens, he's the master of the Ji family. He's indeed very beautiful, but I like this bewitching man more than anyone else. If this man is known as the most beautiful man in the world, then the master of the Ji family must be ranked second. Chapter 1151. The woman who spoke could not help but glance at Ji Jotian with a shy look on her face. Without Ji Jotian, Ji Lan's beauty would definitely shock the world. It was because of Ji Jotian's existence that he was outshone. It was like an orchid blooming next to a beautiful rose. The orchid was destined to be overshadowed. "Master, you have to uphold justice for me." As soon as Lin Yu saw Ji Lan, he sprinted towards her and wept bitterly. "This time, I was ordered by my master to organize this medical conference, but I never thought that Yun Luo Feng would steal my answers and answer 20 questions in less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. I know I made a mistake and wanted to disqualify Yun Luo Feng from participating, but I never thought that he would force me to hand over the fruit of the soul." He sounded aggrieved, as if he had been bullied. "I disobeyed and he beat me until I was severely injured." Master. In the Ji family, the master did not have the highest authority. There was only one person who could be called master, however, that person was even more mysterious than Ji Lan. Very few people had seen him. Unfortunately, this mysterious person was the most powerful person in the Ji family. "I wonder if the Ji family is ashamed of you for distorting the truth." Princess Qing Shuang glanced at Lin Yu and said coldly. The Ji family was the most mysterious family in the Wuhui continent. Even the three great empires had to respect the master of the Ji family. However, for the sake of Yun Luo Feng, Princess Qing Shuang stood on his side without any hesitation, even going against the Ji family. "Humph." Lin Yu snorted and glared at Princess Qing Shuang. "You and Yun Luo Feng are on the same side, so of course you will speak up for him." If she did not steal the answers, how could she have answered so many questions in such a short time? Princess Qing Shuang smiled coldly. "That proves that she is very powerful. I was not wrong about her." Among all the doctors present, only Princess Qing Shuang stood up for Yun Luo Feng. The others looked at each other, afraid that they would offend the Ji family if they said another word. Anyway, the Ji family would not blame Lin Yu for an outsider like Yun Luo Feng. Why should they provoke him? "Master." Lin Yu turned towards Ji Lan and cried out, "Master, you must uphold justice for me. Yun Luo Feng is bullying people too far." Ji Lan frowned. If this kind of cheating happened in the Ji family's territory, what would happen to the Ji family's face if it was spread out? However, he could not believe Lin Yu's one-sided story either. Therefore, he turned his gaze towards Yun Luo Feng and asked, "Is this true?" Yun Luo Feng curled his lips into a smile, his deep black eyes gazing at Ji Lan. "What do you think?" Ji Lan furrowed his brows. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a seductive voice drifted over, shaking his soul. "This time, I've watched a good show, and I've learned what it means to make a false accusation." The man smiled charmingly and leaned lazily against the back of the chair. The night breeze blew through the hall, causing his clothes to flutter, revealing his fair and seductive skin. His voice was neither soft nor soft, but it successfully attracted everyone's attention. Ji Lan was taken aback. He gazed at Ji Jotian, who appeared behind the crowd. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead uncontrollably. "You damned brat, try saying that one more time." Lin Yu was enraged. He glared fiercely at Ji Jotian before turning his gaze towards Ji Lan. "Master, this brat's relationship with Yun Luo Feng is unclear. You can't believe what he says. Besides, he had just insulted our Ji family and threatened to destroy our Ji family. Most importantly, he said that everyone in our Ji family is not a good person, including Master." Chapter 1152. In the Ji family, the Master's position is the most important. The Master's protection of the Master is no less than anyone else's. If he hears anyone insulting the Master of the Ji family in this manner, he would certainly fly into a rage. Lin Yu curled his lips complacently at the thought of this. His gloomy gaze swept towards Ji Jiutian behind him. At this moment, he did not notice that Ji Lan's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. His clothes were drenched in sweat. Ji Lan instinctively raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead and hurriedly walked towards Ji Jiutian. Damned brat, this is what you get for humiliating the Ji family. This time, you're dead meat. When Lin Yu saw Ji Lan walking towards him, he thought that his master was about to attack Ji Jiutian and the complacency on his face deepened. However, Ji Lan's next words caused Lin Yu to be dumbfounded on the spot. Ancestor, what are you doing here? Ancestor. In the Ji family, there was only one person whom the master would address as ancestor, Whoosh. Lin Yu's face suddenly turned pale. He stumbled a few steps back and his body swayed. Impossible. How could this man be the master? The most mysterious person in the Ji family. This doctor's conference has certainly put on a good show for me. Ji Jiutian smiled seductively. His smile was cold and sinister as his voice rang out icily. Some people had used their status as the organizer to judge the doctor who had answered the wrong question as a failure. In the end, they had framed the doctor. I reckon that even a big drama wouldn't be as interesting as today's show. Ancestor, please forgive me. I'll take care of this. Ji Lan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead once again. He never thought that his ancestor would appear here. There's no need. Ji Jiutian glanced at him icily. I had asked Lin Yu to organize this doctor's conference so that I could send him to Yun Luofeng and let him do whatever he wants with him. Yet, you had to come and cause trouble. Ji Lan's sweat began to flow again. He could tell that his ancestor was enraged this time. Ancestor, please hand Lin Yu over to me. I won't disappoint the master. At a time like this, he could only atone for his sins by doing something that would satisfy his ancestor. I'll believe you for the time being. Ji Jiutian narrowed his eyes and a dangerous arc flashed across his long and narrow eyes. If you displease me even a little bit, then it's time for the Ji family's head to change. Yes, master. Ji Lan's face turned pale. She turned to Lin Yu and her eyes were filled with rage. Lin Yu, you've done something wrong yet you dare to frame others. According to the Ji family's rules, you won't be able to atone for your crimes even if you die 10,000 times. Thump. Lin Yu suddenly knelt on the ground and kowtowed in fear. Family head, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Ji Lan waved her hand and said in a cold voice, Men, take him down for this patriarch and bring him back to be punished according to the patriarch's rules. Yes, patriarch. Instantly, two cultivators stepped out from behind the scenes, grabbed Lin Yu's body and dragged him away. Lin Yu's agonized cries could be heard throughout the hall. It was only when his voice faded away that everything returned to normal. The crowd was so frightened that they did not dare to say a word. Their stunned gazes landed on Ji Jiutian. The unmarried women, in particular, wished that they could pounce on Ji Jiutian like hungry wolves and devour him dry. Not only was this man devastatingly beautiful, his status was also so noble. If they could become his concubine, they would enjoy endless glory and wealth in this lifetime. Chapter 1153. Ji Jiutian's eyes were fixed on Yun Luofeng. His smile was like a beautiful painting. Yun Luofeng, you have won the competition. The fruit of soul belongs to you. Yun Luofeng looked at Ji Jiutian silently. After a long time, she asked, Are you the ancestor of the Ji family? Also, did you specially set up this competition? That's right. Ji Jiutian did not deny Yun Luofeng's words. I just wanted to attract you here and see what kind of person you are. Fortunately, you did not disappoint me. Yun Luofeng did not say anything and quietly stared at Ji Zhoutian. Ji Zhoutian slowly walked in front of Yun Luofeng. His slender fingers gently pinched a black fruit. His action was very seductive and could easily provoke people's souls. The fruit of soul in Lin Yu's hand is fake. This is the real fruit of soul. Because the fruit of soul is very precious, countless strong cultivators want it. Therefore, you may encounter some trouble in the future. He laughed wildly. I believe that you can solve these problems with your strength. Therefore, I will not help you. I, Yun Luofeng, am afraid of anything but trouble. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and took the fruit of soul from Ji Zhoutian. Moreover, I have many troubles around me. Ji Zhoutian was stunned. Indeed, the people around Yun Luofeng would have some troubles. For example, if the people of the Tianhui Empire knew about Elder Guiyang and Qingmu, they would definitely come looking for Yun Luofeng. Moreover, there was an even bigger trouble around her. Take care of yourself. Ji Zhoutian laughed and gently patted Yun Luofeng's head. Then, he walked out of the hall with an insolent laugh. In the blink of an eye, the enchanting red dress disappeared into the sunset. Ji Lan wiped her cold sweat and nodded to Yun Luofeng. Then, she quickly left with the group of people from the Ji family. Yun Luofeng withdrew her gaze and put away the fruit of soul. Her dark eyes turned to Princess Qing Shuang and said, "Thank you." Although Princess Qing Shuang was not threatening, she was the only one who had stood up for her. And Lan looked a little embarrassed. He had hesitated before, so he did not stand up in time like Princess Qing Shuang. He had also missed the only opportunity to establish a friendly relationship with Yun Luofeng. You're welcome. Princess Qing Shuang blinked as a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Moreover, I'm helping you for my own good. I believe that with your strength, you will definitely stand at the top of the continent. When that time comes, I will be able to borrow your light. Perhaps I will even need your help in the future. Princess Qing Shuang was very honest. She did not say some high-sounding words like ordinary people. Instead, she said what was on her mind. Yun Luofeng smiled. In the future, if you need anything, even if I am 1,000 miles away, I will rush over to help. One sentence, a lifetime of love. The grace of a drop of water must be returned with a gushing spring. After all, the Ji family was very powerful. They were on par with the three great empires. Perhaps they were even more powerful. However, under such circumstances, Princess Frost was willing to take the risk to speak up for her. This was also the reason why she had accepted Princess Frost from the bottom of her heart. I won't be polite. Princess Frost smiled. Her smile was very beautiful, like a flash of youth. Qingmu, Qingyan, let's go. Chapter 1154. Yun Luofeng took one last look at Princess Qing Shuang, then turned and walked out of the hall. She did not notice that in the corner, a pair of gloomy eyes were staring at her. Qingmu, that old bastard, when he left the Tianhui Empire, he was poached by Yun Luofeng. How dare he say that he's going back to his hometown? No, I have to tell His Majesty about this. Tianhui Empire. In the luxurious palace, the emperor received a pigeon message. His face was dark and gloomy. Qingmu, that old bastard, how dare he lie to me? What do you mean by going back to his hometown? He has clearly abandoned me and chosen another place. Although he didn't need an old fellow like Greenwood who didn't listen to orders, that didn't mean he was willing to make Greenwood serve someone else. Especially when that person was Yun Luofeng. And Guiyang, he is not a good person either. He lied to me and his disciple offended the people of the Peerless Empire. When I went out to hide for a few days, he took everyone in the Imperial Hospital away. Whenever he thought of the day he would return and see the empty imperial hospital, he would feel a burning urge in his heart. He wished he could tear that group of people into pieces. Your Majesty. Imperial concubine Lu smiled as she nestled in the emperor's arms. It's just Yun Luo Feng, what are you afraid of? Why don't we send troops to destroy him? My dear concubine, this Yun Luo Feng has gained the favor of Princess Qing Shuang of the Liyue Empire. In addition, she has a good relationship with the ancestors of the Ji family. I'm afraid it will not be easy to deal with him. The emperor sighed, his face full of helplessness. He also wanted to destroy Yun Luo Feng, but he did not have the strength to do so. He could only watch as his enemy continued to cause trouble. Suddenly, in the imperial study, a sinister laugh came out of nowhere and echoed in the room. The emperor's face changed and he shouted, "Who is it? Come out now." As soon as the emperor finished speaking, the sinister voice came out again. How dare you be an emperor with such courage? You should just change the dynasty. As soon as he finished speaking, an old man shrouded in darkness appeared in front of him. A layer of black fog floated around the old man's body, making it impossible to see his original appearance. His voice was dry and hoarse, as if a hand was grinding against a wooden board, giving off a very uncomfortable feeling. Who are you? The emperor looked at the old man cautiously and asked. The old man's gloomy voice sounded again. Someone who came to help you. Help me. The emperor was stunned for a moment, and a light flashed in his eyes. That's right, the old man said in a deep voice, I can help you unify the mainland, I can help you take revenge, and I can even provide more power to the cultivators of your empire. The emperor was still very cautious. What do you get out of helping me? If there were no benefits, why would this old man help her for no reason? I want the imperial seals of your 3 empires. The old man's voice was like sand, making people feel very uncomfortable. However, hearing his words, the emperor was stunned. What do you want the jade seal for? You don't need to know how to use it. As long as you understand it, I will be able to help you. After I help you, you can give me the jade seal. This is a fair deal. Unifying the continent was probably everyone's dream. If he really had such an opportunity, how could he give it up? Chapter 1155. Thinking of this, the emperor gritted his teeth and said, Okay, I promise you. The premise is that you help me unify the mainland first. At that time, I will give you the imperial jade seal. The old man laughed sinisterly. I won't show up when you do these things, but I can make the army of the Tianhui Empire very powerful, immortal and indestructible. Immortal and indestructible. The emperor's eyes lit up. Deal. If there really was an immortal and indestructible army, then from now on, who in the entire mainland would dare to defy him? Ha ha ha. The more the emperor thought about it, the more he could not help but laugh. His laughter spread out and lingered in the sky for a long time. When imperial concubine Lu heard the conversation between the two, her beautiful eyes turned slightly, and a sinister look flashed across her eyes. She hurriedly gave a few instructions to the palace maid beside her, and could not help but raise the corner of her lips into a sinister smile. Wuhui continent. The situation was bound to be broken because of this. Tianyun Nation. In the Yi residence, Jun Fengling looked at the sky leisurely, with a touch of uneasiness in her eyes. Yi Jingchen walked to Jun Fengling's side and hugged her from behind. Are you thinking about Xiao and Feng again? Jun Fengling shook her head. I don't know why, but I've been feeling a little uneasy recently. It seems that something big is going to happen. Don't worry. I will protect your safety. As long as I'm not dead, I will stand in front of you and never let you get hurt. Yi Jingchen's voice was very firm, and he made a solemn vow. June Fengling lowered her eyes and smiled. She gently stroked her round belly, and the smile on her lips revealed a gentle light. Brother Yi, I feel that in these few days, our child will be born. How good would it be if Xiao and Feng Er were home at this time? Feng Er's medical skills are excellent. If she's here, the baby and I will be safe. She sighed softly, and her words were filled with unspeakable sorrow. Yi Jingchen held her hand tightly. June Er, you still have me. Believe me, I will not let anything happen to you and your child. I hope so. June Fengling sighed again. She looked at the blue sky, and the worry in her heart grew, making her feel very uneasy. This is bad. At this time, a maidservant hurriedly ran over and said, Young master, young madam, the Tianhui Empire's army is attacking. What? Yi Jingchen and June Fengling looked at each other in shock. What's going on? Wasn't there a rule among the countries that forbade the use of troops and horses? How dare the Tianhui Empire break this stalemate? Yi Jingchen frowned, his handsome face was cold. Yi Ji. June Fengling held Yi Jingchen's hand tightly. Why now? If it had been half a month later, my child would have been born, and I would have been able to fight alongside you. Unfortunately, I can't help you now. Once the Tianhui Empire attacked, as a member of the Yi family, Yi Jingchen must lead his men to fight. However, her heart was very uneasy. He felt that if Brother Yi went there, he would never be able to return. June go back and wait for me. Yi Jingchen comforted June Fengling and said gently. No. June Fengling held him tightly, for fear that once she let go, this man would leave forever. Yi Ji, I want to face this with you. They had always been fighting side by side and had never been separated. Chapter 1156. At this time, how could she leave Yi Jingchen to face the danger alone? June, Yi Jingchen lowered his head and kissed June Fengling's forehead. Protect our child and wait for me to come back. Child. June Fengling's body trembled. Her palm touched her belly, and her face was a little pale. Yes, if she and Brother Yi died together on the battlefield, she could also be a couple with him in hell. If so, what about their child? How could he, who hadn't even seen this world, lose his life just like that? Brother Yi. I will wait for you to come back. June Fengling's lips were pale, and her voice was trembling. You must come back. Our child can't live without a father, and I can't live without you. I promise you, I will come back. Yi Jingchen looked at June Fengling and turned to walk out of the Yi family. Looking at the man's figure leaving, June Fengling finally couldn't hold back. She covered her lips tightly with her hand, and tears flowed from between her fingers. Suddenly, a throbbing pain came from her lower abdomen. She lowered her body in pain, and her beautiful face was pale and colorless. Young madam. The maidservant saw June Fengling's strange appearance and hurried forward to support her body. Quick, help me back, I think I'm going to give birth early. June Fengling clenched the corner of her clothes tightly, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Did God also know that Brother Yi was going to the battlefield, so he let her child be born early? What happened? The rest of the Yi family was also alarmed and hurried out. They saw June Fengling being supported by the maidservants, and their faces changed. The army of the Tianhui Empire is here, and the young master went to fight outside the city gate. Young madam was shocked, and her child is going to be born early. The maidservant hurriedly explained. What? Old Yi was furious. The people of the Tianhui Empire dare to attack our Tianyun country. Men, fight with this patriarch. Old Master Yun, I'll leave my daughter-in-law to your Yun family. Before leaving, old Yi did not forget to tell Yun Luo. Yun Luo nodded. June is my granddaughter's future mother-in-law. I will definitely take good care of her. You can rest assured. Thank you. The old man from the Yi family cupped his fists and led the Yi family's experts away. Exeter, Yun Qingya frowned as a resolute look flashed across her cold and handsome face. I'll go help. You take care of the Yi family's young madam. Ning Axian was taken aback. Big brother Yun, I also want to help you fight. No. Yun Qingya shook her head. There's only one woman in the Yi family, Yi Qi. I'm afraid she won't be able to take care of the Yi family's young madam by herself. I want you to stay and help. More importantly, he didn't want Ning Axian to face such danger. Hearing this, Ning Axian nodded lightly. Okay, big brother Yun, I'll listen to you. Go and come back quickly, I'll take good care of the young madam. Yun Qingya glanced at Ning Axian, then turned around and walked out. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared from Ning Axian's eyes. She came back to her senses and said, Young madam is due to give birth in a few days, so there are midwives in the manor. Quickly help young madam into the manor to rest. Yi Qi, accompany your adoptive mother. I'll go find the midwife. Yi Qi hurriedly nodded. She looked anxiously at June Fengling and gently held her hand. Adoptive mother, don't worry about adoptive father. He'll be fine. When you give birth to the baby, he'll be back. Chapter 1157. June Fengling was in so much pain that she had no strength to speak. Sweat dripped from her forehead. She clenched Yi Qi's hand tightly and bit her lip until it bled. She had no other wish now. She only hoped that after the birth of her child, she could go and help Yi Jingqin. Outside the city gate. Under the leadership of a middle-aged general, a group of soldiers stood there, shouting incessantly. The gate of the city slowly opened. The first to step out was Jian Qingwen, dressed in a military uniform. He held an iron sword in his hand and was followed by a group of soldiers. Next, Yi Jingqin and the others rushed over and blocked the city gate. Jian Qingwen, I didn't come to Heavenly Cloud Nation for your imperial family. I came here to cause trouble for the Yi family. If you leave now, I might spare your life. The general sneered, otherwise, don't blame me for destroying your imperial family. Jian Qingwen's expression was cold. The Yi family is a force of our Tianyun kingdom, so I have the right to protect them. Moreover, have you forgotten the rules of the various kingdoms? Rules? The general laughed. What rules? Why don't I know? I only know that the Wushuang Empire and the Liyue Empire will soon become the vassals of our Tianyun kingdom. Jian Qingwen's face changed. What do you mean? My meaning is very clear. This continent will soon become the world of our Tianyun kingdom, ahaha. The general laughed again. Come, kill everyone in the Yi family, leave no one alive. Oh, I forgot, Yun Luofeng's relatives are also in the Yi family. At that time, I must torture them. That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Yi Jingqin stepped forward and said mockingly. Kill them. The general waved his hand and said coldly. In an instant, the soldiers behind him rushed into the battlefield like a group of madmen, and the sounds of battle shook the heavens. Yi Jingqin rushed into the crowd and stabbed a soldier's chest with his sword. The soldier's face remained expressionless, as if he did not know pain. He punched Yi Jingqin hard. Yi Jingqin's eyes narrowed and flashed past. At this moment, the bloody hole in the soldier's chest gradually healed. That's right. The place where Yi Jingqin had stabbed him earlier was healing at the fastest speed possible. What's going on? Yi Jingqin's face drained of color as he retreated into the crowd of the Yi family with a solemn expression. Jian Qingwen frowned. These soldiers are strange. They are like puppets that don't know pain. They only know how to charge and break through enemy lines. Moreover, they have the ability to heal themselves. What happened to the Tianhui Empire? Yi Jingchen's eyes darkened. When he saw that there were no powerhouses among the attackers, he thought that they would be dealt with quickly. Who would have thought that these soldiers would be immortal? Be careful. Seeing the soldiers attacking Yi Jingchen, he shouted, pulling Yi Jingchen out of his thoughts. He hurriedly raised his sword to block the attack. Just now, he encountered God of Meng on the battlefield. If it weren't for Jian Qingwen's warning, he might have been seriously injured. No. Jun He was still waiting for him at home. He had to get rid of these people as soon as possible. At this moment, there were no pedestrians on the streets of the Tianhui Empire. Those people had already been warned by the imperial family and had closed their doors, so the whole street seemed extremely desolate. Only the sounds of fighting could be heard. Chapter 1158. From dawn to dusk, the soldiers of Tianyun had all fallen. Only Jian Qingwen and the Yi family were still struggling to hold on. This battle lasted for a day and a night. The enemies on the other side seemed to know no fatigue and continued to fight endlessly. The Yi family. Jun Fingling's heart-wrenching voice could be heard from the room. Her voice was filled with pain. It was so painful that it made the hearts of those who heard it tremble. It had been a day and a night and the amniotic fluid had broken, but the child's head had not been revealed. The midwife was extremely anxious. This won't do. If this goes on, young madam won't be able to hold on for more than a few hours. The midwife stood up and said anxiously, "We have to find a doctor. Otherwise, young madam will definitely lose her life because of the difficult labor. I'll go to the palace to find a doctor. The doctors in the city have already fled." Ning Axayan stood up and turned to leave. Even though the doctors in the palace were all men, she couldn't care less under such circumstances. Nothing was more important than Jun Fingling's life. Jun Fengling gripped the quilt tightly. She had been wise all her life. She didn't die on the battlefield, but she was going to die because of a difficult labor. No. She couldn't accept it. Brother Yi was still fighting. How could she retreat? Child, you've already tortured your mother for a day and a night. Normally, you can do whatever you want, but right now, your father is still fighting with someone. Your mother must go and help him. I beg you, hurry up and come out. If anything happens to your father, your mother will feel guilty for the rest of her life. A line of tears flowed from the corner of Jun Fingling's eyes. Whenever she thought of the danger that Yi Jingchen was facing, her heart ached unbearably. Perhaps it was because she understood Jun Fingling's words that she felt her body relax. The child's little head left her body and was exposed to the outside. Young madam. The midwife was overjoyed and hurriedly caught Jun Fengling again. The child's head is already out. As long as you push harder, he will be born. You must do your best. Jun Fengling was comforted. Her body seemed to have suddenly gained strength. She forcefully squeezed the child out of her body. Wah! A cry resounded throughout the room. It's a boy, young madam. It's a boy. You still have one in your stomach. Don't give up. She's about to be born. After giving birth to one child, it was easier to have another child. When the second child was also squeezed out of her body, Jun Fengling felt her whole body relax, and she instantly lost all her strength. She lay on the bed, gasping for breath. The sheets beneath her had long been soaked in sweat. Congratulations, young madam. You've given birth to a boy and a girl. However, this little girl doesn't cry or make a fuss. She's very obedient. June Fengling forced her eyes open and looked at the two children in the midwife's arms. Of these two children, one was constantly making noise, while the other was sleeping quietly. If he hadn't sensed the girl's breath, he might have thought that she was already dead. Chi-Chi, June Fengling's palm pressed hard against the bed as she said tiredly, "Go get the medicine Feng left behind." Godmother. Yi-Chi's body trembled. You just gave birth. You can't go to Godfather's place. I'm fine. June Fengling shook her head. Fenger left some medicine for me earlier. It can help me recover my strength. Go and bring it over. After I take it, I'll be able to help your godfather. Chapter 1159. Before Yun Luofeng left, he was afraid that June Fengling would encounter danger during the birth, so he deliberately left some medicinal herbs behind to prevent any danger from happening. Godmother, why didn't you take this medicine out earlier if you had it? Yi-Chi asked angrily. You scared me to death just now. June Fengling smiled weakly. I still had strength at the time, so I didn't need this medicine. If I really didn't have any strength, I would definitely take it. I won't let my children be in danger. Of course, if the people from the Tianhui Empire hadn't suddenly attacked, she would have taken the medicine. It was because she wanted to help Yi Jingchen that she planned to wait until after the birth to take the medicine. Okay, I'll go get it. Yi Chi had always seen the relationship between June Fengling and Yi Jingchen over the years. How could Godmother wait here with peace of mind when her godfather went to face the danger? She had never been a woman who hid behind a man. Even if she had just given birth, she would go to the battlefield and fight side by side with her man. Yi Chi quickly brought a piece of blood ginseng. June Fengling put the blood ginseng in her mouth and felt the strength in her body gradually increase. Chi-Chi, Miss Ning, I'll have to trouble you two to look after my two children. After saying this, June Fengling's body turned into a gust of wind and quickly rushed out. The sand at the city gate was dyed red with blood, but it had become black with the erosion of time. However, the black blood was quickly dyed with new blood, and it was a beautiful red. Yi Jingchen was panting as he fought the enemy. He felt his spiritual power and physical strength gradually being consumed. If he continued to fight, his spiritual power would be depleted, and he would be at the mercy of others. Bang! Suddenly, the general saw that Yi Jingchen was gradually losing strength. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he hurriedly punched and sent Yi Jingchen flying. The spiritual power penetrated into Yi Jingchen's internal organs, causing his face to turn pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Shoot! Kill Yi Jingchen first. The general sneered, waved his hand, and ordered cruelly. The archers raised their arrows and aimed at Yi Jingchen's body. Thousands of arrows were fired at the same time. If it had been in the beginning, these arrows would not have been a problem for Yi Jingchen, and he could have easily avoided them. But now, he had used up all of his spiritual power, so he had no time to deal with the enemies in front of him. Yi Jingchen raised his head and faced the tens of thousands of arrows without any fear of death. Suddenly, an anxious voice came from behind him. No! Brother Yi, quickly get out of the way, quickly go. His body trembled. When he turned his head, he saw June Fengling rushing towards him. Her eyes were filled with despair as tears streamed down her beautiful face. Her pale face was extremely translucent as she stared at Gu Ruoyan with heartache. Yi Jingchen stretched out his hand, wanting to touch the woman's face, but the woman was still a distance away from him, so he could only touch the air in front of him. The members of the Yi family also stopped fighting. When they saw the arrow flying towards Yi Jingchen, they rushed towards him as fast as they could. Puchi! Time was silent at this moment. June Fengling, who was running wildly, also stopped in her tracks. She covered her mouth tightly with her hand, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. The sword in Yun Qingya's hand slipped down. Her cold and handsome face was filled with sorrow at this moment. His gaze was as if he couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Chapter 1160. Yi Jingchen was stunned. He didn't feel any pain from his body, so he turned his head. In an instant, his pupils shrank, and anger welled up in his heart. In front of him, the man opened his arms and used his strong body to block Yi Jingchen. Countless arrows penetrated his body, and blood flowed along the arrows and fell to the ground. His body was like a huge mountain, but it made Yi Jingchen's heart tremble. General Jian, boom! The mountain-like body collapsed with a loud bang, falling straight to the ground in front of Yi Jingchen. General Jian. Yi Jingchen climbed up from the ground and crawled towards Jian Qingwen. He used all his strength to crawl to his side, tears streaming down his face. General Jian, why did you do this? Why? Who said that a man shouldn't cry easily? It's just that it wasn't painful. General Jian coughed twice, and a mouthful of blood came out of his mouth. His voice was so weak that it seemed like it would disappear at any time. I promised Xiao Feng that when she was away, I would protect her family for her. A man's words carry weight, and I must do what I promised. On that day, Yun Luofeng helped Jian Qingwen to break through his strength. In exchange, she asked Jian Qingwen to protect her family when she was away. But she didn't expect that Jian Qingwen was willing to lose his life for this promise. After saying this, Jian Qingwen's hand fell from Yi Jingchen's palm. His eyes gradually closed, and he quietly lost his life. No. Yi Jingchen raised his head and shouted. Tianhui Empire, you will die a horrible death. You will die a horrible death. His voice was full of anger, and his sad eyes were bloodshot. He turned his head and stared at the general of the Tianhui Empire. You are a person who has exhausted your spiritual power. What qualifications do you have to curse me? The general smiled coldly. Besides, Jian Qingwen was courting death. It has nothing to do with me. The people of the Yi family were immersed in a sad atmosphere. Now that they heard the words of the general, their sadness turned into anger, and they madly attacked the soldiers of the Tianhui Empire. However, no matter how strong the Yi family's experts were, they were no match for this undying and indestructible army. No matter how much damage they suffered, they didn't know pain. Therefore, if this continued, the Yi clan would exhaust all their spiritual power. If it was just exhaustion, he could rely on the blood ginseng to recover. It was not so easy to exhaust his spiritual power. Looks like I'm late. Suddenly, a cold voice came from the side. It was as if a force had mixed with this voice and fell into the crowd, causing the two sides of the battle to involuntarily separate. The man broke through the void and arrived. His white robe was like that of an immortal. He was handsome beyond compare, as if he had walked out of a painting. He was so perfect that it made people forget to breathe. Who are you? The general's face darkened as he asked coldly. The man raised his lips and smiled. His face was as handsome as a banished immortal, revealing a gentle luster. Yun Luofeng's old lover. If it weren't for the fact that the Yi family was grieving over Jian Cheng's death, they might have been amused by the man's words. But now, no one laughed. Their faces were filled with sorrow. No matter who you are, since you came here, you must die. The general's eyes were cold, and he ordered coldly, kill this boy. On the battlefield, the sound of fighting rang out again. Chapter 1162. Good. The Empress clapped her hands and gritted her teeth. Madam Yi, when the time comes, help me turn Feng Er's life around and bring the Emperor of the Tianhui Empire back to me. I want to eat his blood, drink his flesh, and use his bones to honor my brother. Master Yi, take your wife back first. The emperor smiled bitterly and helplessly. I heard that madam just gave birth and went through a battle. It will definitely affect her body. Take her back to recuperate. I and the empress won't blame you for this. That's right. The only ones who deserved to die were the bastards of the Tianhui Empire. They hated the people of the Tianhui Empire. Let's go. Yi Jingchen held Jun Fingling's shoulder and said gently, I'll take you back to rest first. When Feng comes back, we'll decide how to take revenge. Jun Fengling nodded gently. She looked at the empress, who was nestled in the emperor's arms, and her eyes flashed with guilt. She immediately turned and walked out of the palace. In the palace. In the back garden. Jun Fengling remained silent. Her whole body was shrouded in a layer of sadness. It was obvious that she had not come out of the previous incident. Yi Jingchen quietly accompanied her, not saying a word. Brother Yi, Jun Fengling suddenly stopped. In a few months, let's leave the Yi family. Leave? Yes, if we stay in the Yi family, it will be difficult for us to grow stronger. We have to go out and train like before. Only then can I grow faster. Jun Fengling turned to look at Yi Jingchen. I don't want what happened today to happen again. I don't want any more casualties around me. I don't want to experience this pain again. These days, Jian Qingwen often went to the Yi family and established a good relationship with Yi Jingchen and his wife. Her heart ached when she thought of her old friends dying on the battlefield. Okay, in a few months, we'll leave and let the Yi family take care of the children. When they thought of their 2 newborn children, their hearts were filled with reluctance. But what could they do? Only by becoming strong could they protect the people around them. Although Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao were strong, they could not stay in the Yi family forever. If something like this happened again in their absence, how could they deal with it? Therefore, they had to abandon their newborn child and go out to improve their strength. Yi Jingchen held Jun Fingling's hand tightly. Jun, I know you can't bear to part with the child. Don't worry. The child will understand you in the future. Jun Fengling nodded weakly. No matter how reluctant she was, she had to leave. Yi Ji, I'm tired. Let's go back and rest. After saying this, Jun Fengling walked out of the palace. Since the Yi family had a wet nurse, there was no need for Jun Fengling to feed them. Therefore, when she returned to the Yi family, she glanced at the 2 children and went back to her room to rest. Chapter 1163. The Yi family sent a message saying that the Tianhui Empire launched an attack on the Tianyun Empire. Jian Qingwen sacrificed himself to protect Yi Jingchen. The Tianhui Empire. Yun Luofeng clenched the letter in her hand tightly. Her beautiful face was filled with murderous intent. What? Princess Qing Shuang was shocked. You mean General Jian Qingwen of the Tianyun Empire? Yun Luofeng nodded slightly. He died at the hands of the Tianhui Empire. Yun Luofeng had asked Jian Qingwen to take care of her family, but she did not expect that this man, who valued his promise more than his own life, would lose his life because of this. Thinking of the man who affectionately called her Xiao Feng, Yun Luofeng clenched her fists tightly. Her fingertips were bleeding, but she did not notice. Hate. How could she not hate? Although Jian Qingwen was not her family, she had always treated him like an uncle. However, those people had caused his death. Your Royal Highness, something bad has happened. At this moment, a guard from the Liyue Empire rushed in and said respectfully, Your Royal Highness, the Tianhui Empire is under attack. His Majesty ordered you not to return. What did you say? Princess Qing Shuang was shocked again. How dare the Liyue Empire attack the Liyue Empire? Not only the Liyue Empire, but the Wushuang Empire is also under attack. Prince Enlon has rushed back. The guard wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said weakly. He did not understand why the Tianhui Empire had the courage to provoke the two empires. Let's go back. Princess Qing Shuang's eyes darkened. She turned to Yun Luofeng and said, Miss Yun, I am sorry, I have to return. If there is a chance in the future, I will visit you again. After saying this, Princess Qing Shuang left in a hurry without looking back. In the blink of an eye, her beautiful figure had disappeared. Qing Mu, Yun Luofeng looked up and ordered, You stay here, I will go back to the Tianyun Empire. Tower Master, do you need the medical tower to go with you? No, Yun Luofeng shook his head. I will take the Steel Flame Legion with me. After saying this, Yun Luofeng walked out of the room. Qing Mu looked at the girl's receding figure and sighed, the Tianhui Empire has really made a big mess this time. Isn't that so? Guiyang said with a bitter smile. Yun Luofeng pays more attention to relationships. They killed her people, how could she just let it go? I am afraid that the fate of the Tianhui Empire will be even more miserable than the Nangong family. Greenwood rejoiced, luckily we left early. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself from beating up that stupid emperor. The century-old foundation of the Tianhui Empire will be destroyed in his hands. Although Yun Luofeng's expression was calm just now, in reality, he had already set off raging waves. The Tianhui Empire had offended her, so how could it survive? That was absolutely impossible. Heavenly Cloud Nation. Yi family. June Fengling sat in the courtyard with the children in her arms. Her handsome face raised a shallow arc, and her gentle gaze enveloped the two children in her arms. Adoptive mother, let me help you. Yi Qi stepped forward and wanted to help June Fengling hold the children. June Fengling shook her head, no, when the Tianhui Empire is destroyed, I will leave with your adoptive father, so I want to cherish the time I have with them. Chapter 1164. During this period of time, June Fengling did everything herself. Even feeding the children, she did it herself. Because they didn't have much time left, she wanted to spend the last time with them. Young master, young madam, Miss Yun is back. Suddenly, a joyful voice came from outside the door. June Fengling's fingers trembled and she hurriedly stood up from the pavilion. Her eyes were filled with tears of surprise as she looked at the young girl who walked in from outside the courtyard. The young girl's clothes were whiter than snow. When her eyes saw June Fengling standing in the pavilion, she couldn't help but stop. Feng. June Fengling's lips trembled. You're finally back. Since Jian Qingwen's death, she hadn't been able to get out of her grief. She and Yi Jingchen blamed themselves. If they were strong enough, Jian Qingwen wouldn't have sacrificed himself in vain. Mother. Yun Luofeng walked over quickly and gently hugged June Fengling. He lowered his eyes and said, I know everything. Don't worry, I will go to the Tianhui Empire later to avenge Uncle Jian. June Fengling wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and forced a smile on her face. Feng, the Empress's pregnancy has been affected recently. She may not be able to keep the child. I want you to go to the palace to see her. After all, if it weren't for the Yi family, Jian Qingwen wouldn't have died, and the Empress's pregnancy would have been affected. Okay. Yun Luofeng nodded. Go to the palace to treat the Empress. June Fengling wanted to say something but stopped herself in the end. She looked at Yun Luofeng lovingly and said, Child, you've worked hard. I've heard about what happened in Endless City. You've just settled things there and now you're rushing back to take revenge. Mother. Yun Luofeng paused and raised his head. His deep black eyes were firm. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If someone offends me, even if he escapes thousands of miles away, I will definitely kill him. I won't let him live. Jun Fengling stroked Yun Luofeng's hair. Then go. If you're late, I'm afraid the Empress's baby won't be safe. Okay. Yun Luofeng didn't say anything more. She looked at the two children in Jun Fengling's arms and turned to leave. This time, she came back in a hurry and left in a hurry. He didn't even have time to bid farewell to the old master before he hurried to the palace. Perhaps it was because of Jian Qingwen's death that the Empress's pregnancy was affected, causing the entire imperial palace to be lifeless. The palace maids and guards were all silent and busy with their own matters. Yun Luofeng walked into the Empress' bedroom and immediately saw the Emperor, who was personally feeding the Empress medicine. "Miss Yun, you're back." The Emperor was feeding the Empress medicine when he saw Yun Luofeng pushing open the door and entering. A trace of joy flashed across his eyes. After seeing Yun Luofeng, the Empress, whose face had been full of sorrow, immediately climbed up from her bed with an unknown strength and rushed towards Yun Luofeng. "Feng, your uncle Jian died so miserably. Those inhumane bastards from the Heavenly Hui Empire killed him. I beg you to avenge your uncle Jian." The Empress cried her heart out. Her voice had already become dumbfounded. Her hands clutched Yun Luofeng's arms tightly. Her red and swollen eyes were filled with hatred. Yun Luofeng looked at the haggard face of the Empress and his tone softened. "I came back this time to avenge Jian Shu. When the time comes, I will definitely bring the Emperor of the Heavenly Hui Empire to Jian Shu's grave and make him kowtow and apologize. And you can do whatever you want with him." Chapter 1165. The Empress loosened her hand. That's good, that's good. You must avenge your uncle Jian. He died so miserably. I will definitely avenge him. Of course, you have to take good care of the fetus. Jian Shu has passed away. Don't you want your child anymore? Child. The Empress's body trembled. She gently stroked her slightly protruding belly. Her eyes were filled with sadness. "I know I can't do this, but when I think of your uncle Jian's death, I can't extricate myself from my grief. The doctor said that I can't keep this child." "Empress, what nonsense are you talking about?" The Emperor gently stroked the Empress's black hair. His tone was slightly reproachful. "Don't worry, our child will be fine. Feng has come back. With her medical skills, she can definitely save the child. What you have to do now is to relax and let General Jian rest in peace." Yun Luofeng's eyes fell on the Empress's belly. She pondered for a while and said, "I will go to the Tianhui Empire for revenge later. Before that, I will leave you a prescription. At that time, you can decoct the medicine according to the prescription. Soon, the Empress's body will recover. Miss Yun, I really have to thank you again this time." The Emperor showed his gratitude. "First, you saved the Empress' life, then you made the Empress pregnant. Now, because of you, this child can be protected." Yun Luofeng smiled bitterly. "You used to thank me, and I accepted it with a clear conscience. But this time, because of the Yi family, the Empress was dragged down. Uncle Jian died to save my father, and the Empress's pregnancy was affected because of his death. So, in the end, it is the Yi family's fault. Miss Yun, are you going to avenge yourself later?" The Emperor looked at Yun Luofeng and asked. Yun Luofeng nodded gently. "I will be back in half a month." "Good." The Emperor gritted his teeth. "Those bastards killed General Jian and made my Empress so sad. I will never forgive them for this. Miss Yun, if you want to take revenge, you won't have enough manpower. You can use the troops of my imperial kingdom as you wish. I will give you full authority to deal with the millions of troops. No, Yun Luofeng shook her head. I alone am enough to destroy the Tianhui Empire. If I bring the soldiers, it will cause unnecessary casualties. I won't allow that to happen. She had always treasured anyone's life. He had never risked the lives of the Steel Flame Legion. Just like back in Endless City, she also chose to explore the underground by herself, leaving the rest behind. This was because she would never make unnecessary sacrifices. It was also because of this that the people around her were willing to obey her. After Yun Luofeng handed the prescription to the Empress, she walked out and left the palace. Empress, the Emperor hugged the Empress' body tightly and comforted her in a soft voice. Feng has already gone to the Tianhui Empire to take revenge. We will soon be able to see the Emperor of the Tianhui Empire's expression of regret. You should take good care of your pregnancy now. The Empress buried her head in the Emperor's chest. Thinking back to her brother's death, she still felt a heart-wrenching pain. Compared with the sad heavenly cloud nation, the Tianhui Empire was full of joy. Inside the luxurious palace, the Emperor was holding a banquet. There were songs and dances to celebrate peace and prosperity. Chapter 1166. There was a proud smile on the Emperor's face. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw the scene of him unifying the continent. Your Majesty. Noble concubine Lu raised her wine cup and walked to the front of the Emperor. Congratulations, Your Majesty, on your first victory. Before long, the Peerless Empire and the Flowing Moon Empire will become Your Majesty's territory. If the other empires do not obey Your Majesty can send people to destroy them. Ha ha. The Emperor laughed wildly again. His laughter was extremely arrogant. This continent will become my territory. Boom. Just as the Emperor was in high spirits, a loud noise came from outside the banquet hall, instantly attracting everyone's attention. The Emperor frowned and slowly got up. Who is so bold to dare to make trouble in my Tianhui Empire? As soon as he finished speaking, a voice came from outside the door. It was filled with murderous intent. People of the Tianhui Empire, come out and face your death. The Emperor's face was very ugly. He did not expect that at this time, there would be people who were not afraid of death. Let's go, I want to see who is coming to make trouble. He flicked his sleeves and quickly walked out of the hall. The sky was dusky and there was a young girl standing in the void. The girl's white robes were particularly eye-catching in the dusky sky and could be seen at a glance. When the Emperor saw the girl who appeared in the sky above the palace, his face sank. He shouted coldly, Yun Luofeng, you actually took the initiative to come here. The people of the Tianhui Empire killed Jian Qingwen. This time, I am avenging him. Yun Luofeng gently raised his chin and said condescendingly. Haha, then I want to see if you have the strength to do so. Come, catch this woman. A touch of ruthlessness flashed in the Emperor's eyes as he said with a sinister smile. In an instant, a group of soldiers walked over from nearby. In the silent night, only the sound of their footsteps could be heard. The group of people surrounded Yun Luofeng like the god of death. Their aura was cold, and their faces were cold. They were like a group of emotionless machines that only knew how to kill. Yun Luofeng stood in the middle of the encirclement. His expression did not change as he stared at the group of people coldly. Kill. Following the command of the leader, all the soldiers moved and quickly rushed towards Yun Luofeng. A eunuch brought over a seat for the Emperor. He flicked his sleeves and sat down. He sneered and said, Yun Luofeng, in this life, the biggest mistake you made was to walk right into a trap. Yun Luofeng did not speak. When the group of soldiers arrived in front of her, her body suddenly burst into flames. At the same time, her evil and cold voice gradually rang out, spreading throughout the entire palace. Fire, milk tea, mouse queen, Meng Meng. All of you, charge. Kill them without mercy. In an instant, several figures appeared out of thin air beside Yun Luofeng. The few figures quickly charged towards the group of soldiers. Fire opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of flames. The temperature of the flames was incomparably hot, and went straight into his soul. The originally expressionless soldiers were howling in pain as they were burned by the flames, and a burnt smell spread throughout the passageway. Milk Tea and the others did not have the strength of fire. Just as he bit off the soldier's arm had already grown out. No matter how ferocious its bite was, the soldier's flesh would grow back as if it was regenerating. Chapter 1167. So, Milk Tea was furious. She and Meng Meng looked at each other and rushed to one of the soldiers at the same time. She opened her mouth and bit the soldier's arm. As the three of them bit, the soldier's flesh quickly disappeared. In the end, not even a hair was left. Can't you regenerate? I'll make sure you don't even have a piece of flesh left. Let's see how you can continue to grow. The other golden-seeking mice were also released. Although they were not as strong as Milk Tea and the other two, they were still not something the soldiers could resist. After a while, those soldiers who had a ferocious aura disappeared from the corridor of the imperial palace. The emperor's face suddenly sank. Yun Luofeng, it seems that I have really underestimated you. You dare to come to my Tianhui Empire, so you do have some strength. Unfortunately, with your strength, it is not enough to fight against the masters of my Tianhui Empire. Hua! As soon as the emperor's voice fell, countless figures appeared in the void in front of Yun Luofeng. These people were very strong. Some of them had even reached the intermediate level of Holy Spirit realm. Yun Luofeng's eyes were dignified. His evil eyes stared at the many old men standing in front of him, and the corners of his mouth slightly rose. 10 Holy Spirit realm, 8 of them are low-level Holy Spirit realm, and 2 are intermediate Holy Spirit realm. This kind of force is indeed among the best in the continent. Of course, the strength of the Tianhui Empire was not only this. In addition to these Holy Spirit realm, there were also 2 people who had reached the high-level Holy Spirit realm. At this moment, these 2 high-level Holy Spirit realm powerhouses had already led their troops to the Wushuang Empire and the Liyue Empire, so they were not in the Tianhui Empire. Let me think. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and slightly narrowed his eyes. How many minutes will it take to defeat these people? The girl's arrogant voice made the emperor furious. Little girl, being too arrogant is not a good thing. This time, I will teach you a lesson. As the emperor's voice fell, the elders had already begun to move, their figures flashed, and they attacked Yun Luofeng from all directions. Yun Luofeng stood among the crowd, his clothes fluttering in the wind. His expression did not change, and he calmly swept his gaze over the many Holy Spirit realm powerhouses. Boom! In an instant, her aura surged and burst out. Like a wave of light spreading from her body, the Holy Spirit realm powerhouses were knocked back a few steps. In the meantime, countless vines abruptly burst out of the ground and attacked the Holy Spirit cultivators from several directions. Those people were caught off guard. Their bodies were entangled by the vines and firmly fixed in the void. Yun Luofeng raised his eyes slightly and gazed coldly at the emperor. In an icy voice, he said, "What other power do you have? You can take it out." 10 Holy Spirit Masters. 2 of them were mid-level Holy Spirit experts. However, he was actually unable to dodge Yun Luofeng's attack. The emperor's face was pale with fright. He bit his lip and asked, "You've become a Holy Spirit?" Such a young Holy Spirit was a miracle on the continent. Therefore, The emperor could not believe what he was seeing. "Your Majesty." Imperial concubine Lu was so frightened that her entire body trembled. She leaned tightly against the emperor. Her vicious eyes were filled with panic. "When you sent people to attack the Yi family, did you think about the consequences?" Yun Luofeng slowly walked toward the emperor. His expression was cold, and his killing intent was thick. Chapter 1168. Yun Luofeng, do you really think that the Heavenly Hui Empire has its current strength without any trump cards? The emperor clenched his teeth and said, "Lord Shanyun, please help me kill this woman." In that instant, a figure shrouded in black mist appeared in front of Yun Luofeng. The old man's aura was cold, and he stared at the young girl in front of him. His dry and hoarse voice was like a claw constantly grinding against a wooden board, making people feel very uncomfortable. "Little girl, I advise you to leave. Don't meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, don't blame this old man for being impolite. I came here to kill the dog emperor of the Heavenly Hui Empire. No one is qualified to stop me." Yun Luofeng's evil eyes glanced at the old man in front of him and said coldly, "I don't care about the hatred between you and him, but I won't allow you to ruin my plan. If you don't want to leave, then I can only kill you." Boom! A strong killing intent surged out from the old man's body. This powerful aura was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Yun Luofeng's expression changed slightly. She looked at the old man with a dignified expression. This old man was very strong, but she had promised the Empress that she would bring her enemy back for her to deal with. "If the dog emperor of the Heavenly Hui Empire doesn't die, I won't leave." Yun Luofeng faced the pressure and stepped forward. Her eyebrows were filled with arrogance and domineeringness. "Humph!" The old man snorted, and a gloomy and powerful aura spread out once again. After Yun Luofeng received this aura, her body trembled slightly. She still withstood the pressure, and the corners of her mouth curled up in a mocking smile. The old man was a little surprised. How could a mere holy spirit be able to withstand my oppression? This woman was not simple. She could not be allowed to live. "Little girl, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. In that case, this old man will send you to hell." The old man's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Yun Luofeng. He raised his palm and fiercely slapped Yun Luofeng's head. "Stop!" Fire roared in anger and quickly pounced towards the old man. Her blood-red eyes were filled with anger, and the flames on her body burned uncontrollably. However, fire was, after all, a distance away from Yun Luofeng. When the old man's hand slapped down, she was already too late to reach his side. "You're such an old man, yet you're bullying a little girl. Aren't you embarrassed?" Suddenly, a mocking voice rang out from the void. The old man was taken aback. Because of this, a figure in flaxen robes appeared in front of Yun Luofeng, raising his hand to block the old man's attack. Bang! The two palms collided and both of them took a few steps back. The old man narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at the man who had appeared out of thin air. Qin Yuan glanced at the old man in disdain. He turned to face Yun Luofeng and chuckled, "Mistress, Master asked me to come back to see you, so I have come back, Qin Yuan." Yun Luofeng was stunned as he looked at Qin Yuan, who was standing in front of him. "If you're here, then where's Yun Shao?" Qin Yuan scratched the back of his head. "Master still has some matters to attend to, so he couldn't come to see Mistress. That's why he sent me here. I didn't expect to see Mistress in danger. Mistress, take a few steps back. Let this subordinate deal with this person." The old man's expression changed from astonishment to shock. This man's strength was not lower than his own. Chapter 1169. What was this woman's identity? You are, the old man seemed to have sensed something. His eyes suddenly widened, revealing a trace of fear. That's right. He had seen this man before. Wasn't he the bodyguard who followed the god of death? Since he called Yun Luofeng mistress, did that mean that Yun Luofeng was related to the god of death? Congratulations, you guessed correctly. My master is mistress man, yet you want to harm mistress. If my master finds out about this, TSK, even the power behind you won't be able to protect you. Qin Yuan chuckled. However, I am willing to give you a chance. If you harm yourself, you can die without any pain. On the other hand, you know my master's methods very well. The old man's body trembled slightly. He couldn't help but feel terrified when he thought of the god of death's terrifying methods. Why? Why was his luck so bad? A random person he had met was the god of death's woman. My lord. The emperor sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly said, Don't forget, don't you want the jade seals of the three great empires? As long as you kill Yun Luofeng, I will obtain the jade seals for you. The old man didn't speak. After a long while, he picked up a sword from the ground and gently closed his eyes. The moment the sword slashed across his neck, blood spurted out and dyed his clothes red. His body slowly fell down, and with a thud, he fell into the pool of blood. At least he wouldn't be tortured if he harmed himself. If he really fell into the hands of the god of death, perhaps even death would be an extravagant hope for him. The emperor's face was ashen and despair welled up in his heart. His body went limp and he sat paralyzed on the ground. Mistress. Qin Yuan looked at Yun Luofeng and said, This time, my master sent me back. Besides ordering me to protect you, he also asked me to bring you an item. What item? Yun Luofeng raised his brows and asked. Qin Yuan took out a bronze mirror from his clothes and handed it to Yun Luofeng. This is the celestial spirit mirror. My master asked me to give it to you. As for its use, I still don't know. Yun Luofeng put the celestial spirit mirror away. Since this was something that Yun Shao had given her, it would definitely have an extraordinary use. Qin Yuan, go to the Wushuang Empire and the Liyue Empire and kill all the people from the Tianhui Empire. Leave no one alive. Yun Luofeng's eyes flickered with killing intent as he coldly instructed. Yes. Qin Yuan cupped his fists. By the way, Qin Yuan, do you know why this old man wants the jade seals of the three great nations? Yun Luofeng asked, stroking his chin as if he had thought of something. Qin Yuan was silent for a while. Then, he shook his head and said, I'm not sure either. I think the jade seals of these three nations are of no use to him. Yun Luofeng nodded and said, When you go to those two countries, bring the jade seals to me. Chapter 1170. All right. Fire blinked his eyes and walked towards the emperor and imperial concubine Lu with a smile. There was a sinister smile on her young and tender face. You'd better not resist. Otherwise, my flames will not listen to my orders. She opened her small hand and a raging flame burned. After seeing the raging flame, the emperor and imperial concubine Lu trembled, not daring to move an inch. That's more obedient. Fire withdrew his flames in satisfaction and laughed sinisterly. Are you coming with me? Or should I take you with me? No matter how unwilling they were in their hearts, the emperor and imperial concubine Lu still stood up and followed behind Fire. Milk tea, you guys come back. Yun Luofeng raised her hand and all the gold-seeking mice disappeared into thin air. Her gaze then turned to Fire. Let's go back. At this time, the emperor and imperial concubine Lu's eyes were filled with despair, as if they already knew what was waiting for them next. When Yun Luofeng escorted the two of them back to their country, the furious empress ignored the obstruction of others. She picked up a dagger and rushed over to stab the emperor's body. Her eyes were filled with hatred, wishing that she could cut the person in front of her into 1,000 pieces. If the man beside her had not stopped the empress in time, perhaps the empress would have completely lost her mind and moved the fetus again. After Yun Luofeng completed his promise to the empress, he locked himself in the Yi family to study the celestial spirit mirror. However, even Xiao Mo did not know how to use the celestial spirit mirror. A few days later, Qin Yuan, who she had sent to the two empires, returned. When he returned, the first thing Yun Luofeng asked was, "How did you come back to the Wuhui continent?" Qin Yuan rubbed the back of his head. "The place where Master and I are now is called the Seven Continents continent. This continent is different from the Wuhui continent. In that continent, there are people guarding the wormhole. Every 2 years, those people will open the wormhole, allowing people from the two worlds to come and go. As far as I know, it hasn't been 2 years yet." Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows. "Then how did you come back?" Qin Yuan coughed awkwardly. "Well, I knocked out the person guarding the wormhole, so I walked out." Yun Luofeng slowly stood up. "Qin Yuan, tell me where the wormhole is. In a few days, I will go to the 7 continents. Also, I hope that you can stay here. With your strength, you can ensure their safety." "Mistress," Qin Yuan was a little anxious. "Master sent me here to protect you. If I stay, who will protect you?" "I'll be fine." Yun Luofeng slowly turned around and looked at the azure sky outside the door. He said indifferently, "Also, I don't want a tragedy to happen again." Her hands clenched into fists. Now, whenever she thought of Jian Qingwen's death, her heart would fiercely tighten and she would feel extremely uncomfortable. Tragedy had already happened once, so she did not want another tragedy to happen. She could only leave with peace of mind if Qin Yuan stayed. Qin Yuan sighed helplessly. "Mistress, since Master has sent me to you, I will naturally listen to your orders. Don't worry, I will protect your loved ones." "Thank you." Yun Luofeng thanked him, pushed the door open, and walked out. In the hall, Yi Jingchen and his wife were playing with the 2 children. When they suddenly saw Yun Luofeng walking over, they hurriedly stood up and their eyes fell on the girl's beautiful face. Chapter 1171. Feng'er. Jun Fingling's gaze was fixed on the young girl the entire time, and there was a hint of worry in his heroic eyes. "I'm here to bid farewell to you. Next, I'm going to follow in Yun Zhao's footsteps." The young girl's expression was firm and unquestionable. "Go ahead." Jun Fengling said with a smile, "Brother Yi and I will be leaving soon. I hope that we can meet on another continent in the future." Yun Luofeng nodded. "I still have to find the old man and second uncle to say goodbye. Father, Mother, if fate wills it, we will definitely meet again in the future." This time, she would be gone for 1.5 years. Perhaps it would be a few years, or perhaps it would be more than 10 years. However, when the old man found out that Yun Luofeng had just returned and was about to leave again, he, who was over 50 years old, cried like a child and held on to Yun Luofeng's hand, unwilling to let go. "Darling granddaughter, although I've always been blackmailing you during this period of time, I really can't bear to part with you after you leave. Especially since the place you're going to this time is so far away. Grandpa doesn't even know if he'll be able to live until the day you return." Yun Luofeng held the old man's hand tightly. "I will find Yun Xiao as soon as possible and come back to see you. Moreover, you've already broken through to the heavenly spirit realm, so living for another 50 years won't be a problem." The old man immediately fell silent and glared at Yun Luofeng with resentment. "I just wanted to say something emotional. Do you need to slap my face like this?" "Father." Yun Qingye patted the old man's shoulder comfortingly and looked at Yun Luofeng with smiling eyes. Feng'er, remember, we will always wait here for you to return. Yun Luofeng nodded his head lightly and looked at his relatives with a reluctant gaze. Ning Axian didn't say anything. Her beautiful face had a smile on it, and she was dignified and elegant. Her clear eyes stared at Yun Luofeng without blinking. Oh right. Yun Qingye seemed to have thought of something and said, when we were facing the army of the Sky Hui Empire, a man saved us. That man said he was your old lover. What? Upon hearing this, the old man, who was originally sad because of the parting, immediately flew into a rage. You stinking girl, you even have an old lover. Do you dare to do anything that will let Yun Xiao down? The old man trembled with anger. In his heart, Yun Xiao had already become his grandson-in-law. How could he possibly allow Yun Luofeng to do anything that would betray Yun Xiao? Yun Luofeng's mouth twitched. Old lover. How could she not know that she had an old lover? Second uncle, did he say his name? No. Yun Qingye shook her head and said, he asked us to pass on a message to you. How have you been since we parted ways in Twilight City? Twilight City. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. Could it be Chen Yuqing? At this moment, a handsome, fairy-like face appeared in the young girl's mind. She stroked her chin gently with her finger. The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. If this person came from the Twilight City, then it could only be Chen Yuqing. Stupid girl. The old man angrily took off his shoes and threw them at Yun Luofeng. If not for Yun Luofeng's quick reflexes and hurriedly dodging, he would definitely have been hit by this slipper. Grandfather. Yun Luofeng's face darkened as he helplessly called out. Who's your grandfather? Who are you calling grandfather? The old man's face was flushed red. You really found a lover. Let me tell you, I'm only satisfied with Yun Xiao as my grandson-in-law. I won't recognize anyone else. Chapter 1172. The old man snorted, looking like he was dead set on something. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched a few times. Second uncle must have misheard. He's definitely not talking about an old lover, but an old patient. Old patient. The old man's eyes were filled with suspicion. It was obvious that he did not believe Yun Luofeng's words. Yun Luofeng gave Yun Qingye a look. Yun Qingye understood and coughed dryly. Her eyes were filled with a smile. Yes, Feng'er is right. I heard wrongly. That man said a patient, not a lover. Grandfather, I already said that second uncle heard wrongly. Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders. Chen Yuqing is a patient I met in Twilight City. Because I cured his illness, he came to find me this time to repay me. It's getting late now, I have to leave. Scram. The old man glared at him. If you don't bring Yun Xiao back to get married, don't come back to see me. Yun Luofeng smiled. She took one last look at her blood-related relatives, turned around, and walked out. Only when his figure disappeared did Yun Qingye retract her gaze. Her face was filled with helplessness. Father, no one is involved in the relationship between Feng'er and Yun Xiao. Don't worry about them. The anger on the old man's face gradually disappeared. He sighed, I know. Feng'er is my granddaughter. How could I not understand her as a grandfather? Even if the man who saved you is interested in Feng'er, Feng'er will not accept her. Then why did you I just don't want the parting to be too sad. The old man's face was a little tired. Feng'er's path is very broad. She shouldn't be limited to such a small place. As her grandfather, how can I drag her down? Feng'er has already been tired enough during this period of time. I don't want her to leave in peace. If the old man had shown reluctance, Yun Luofeng would not have been so at ease. It was precisely because of his final actions that she was able to leave in peace. Qingya, I'm tired. I'll go down and rest first. You and Axioner should also go back to your room and rest early. The old man's body staggered a little. The moment he turned around, he finally couldn't stop his tears from flowing down his face. At the city gate. It was overgrown with weeds and was extremely desolate. On this road, the blood had not been washed clean, and one could still see the fierce battle that day. Just as Yun Luofeng was about to continue forward, he saw a figure in front of him that looked like an immortal from a painting. There was a smile on Chen Yuqing's handsome face as she stared at Yun Luofeng with a gentle gaze. I've been waiting for you here for a long time. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows. Why did you come to the no-return continent to find me? Do you want to go to the Seven Continents continent? Chen Yuqing went straight to the point. That's right, I really want to go to the Seven Continents. Because there was someone she wanted to see there. Among the forces of the Seven Continents, many forces have space wormholes. Those wormholes are the only way to travel from this world to another world. Chen Yuqing's gaze remained fixed on Yun Luofeng. If you want to enter the Seven Continents, I have a way to help you. What is it? My Chen family has a wormhole. Yun Luofeng was startled. Was this considered wearing out iron shoes in fruitless searching only to find it by chance without even looking for it? She had set out this time to find a way to enter the wormhole. She never thought that the Qin family would have such a wormhole. Chapter 1173. Before you go to the Seven Continents, I will explain the situation of the Seven Continents to you. The Seven Continents, as the name suggests, are divided into 7 continents: the South Continent, the North Continent, the West Continent, the East Continent, the Central Continent, the Spirit Continent, and the Beast Continent. Each continent has its own continent master, and the 7 continent masters are existences that cannot be provoked. On the 7 continents, there is also a ranking list. There are 2 types of ranking list. One is the ranking list of the strong. Those who can enter the list are the most powerful people in the continent. The top 7 of the ranking list of the strong are the continent masters of the 7 continents. In addition to the ranking list of the strong, there is also the ranking list of the geniuses. Those who enter the list are the best among the geniuses. If you encounter these people on the ranking list, you need to avoid them. And then Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and continued to ask. This is all I know. After entering the 7 continents, you can only rely on yourself. I can't help you much. Chen Yuqing stared at Yun Luofeng and said slowly. However, if you need help, even if I can't, I will risk my life to help you. I understand. Yun Luofeng raised his head and stared deeply at Chen Yuqing. Take me to the wormhole now. Okay, come with me. Chen Yuqing glanced at Yun Luofeng and turned to leave. It had been almost 2 years since he left Yellow Spring City. But Yellow Spring City had not changed at all. It was so familiar that Yun Luofeng sighed. You don't plan to go back and see your subordinates? Chen Yuqing pondered for a while and asked. No need. I don't like the feeling of parting. Yun Luofeng shook his head. Chen Yuqing, after I leave, tell them to go to the medical tower in the Wuhui continent. There, their strength will increase very quickly. Okay, I will tell them. After saying this, Chen Yuqing stopped and looked at Yun Luofeng with a smile. We're here. This is the wormhole where my Chen family is. There was a stone door erected on the mountain range in front of them. A powerful force was faintly emitting from the stone door. Chen Yuqing took out a key and inserted it into the keyhole of the stone door. He gathered the spiritual power in his palm on top of the key, and after a while, the stone door emitted a burst of white light. Then, with a bang, it instantly opened. Go in. Good luck. Yun Luofeng walked into the wormhole without any hesitation. When she stepped into the wormhole, there was a loud bang, and the stone door closed again. She did not stop and continued to walk forward. The wormhole was completely dark. Occasionally, there would be storms. Not only did Yun Luofeng have to adapt to the darkness, but he also had to be careful not to get hurt by the storms. After an unknown amount of time, a light appeared in front of her. She quickened her pace and headed towards the light. The moment she stepped out of the wormhole, the scorching sun in the sky shone down dazzlingly. The surrounding trees were lush and verdant, and spiritual energy lingered in the air, making one feel refreshed. 7 continents, I have finally arrived. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile. Once she came to the 7 continents, she would be one step closer to Yun Shao. Ah! Suddenly, a scream was heard, echoing throughout the entire forest. Who are you? Why are you here? I know, you must have been sent by those people to kill the young lady. Run, young lady. A delicate and handsome youth pointed a sword at Yun Luofeng. His hand trembled slightly, and he almost dropped the sword in his hand. Chapter 1174. Yun Luofeng's face darkened. She looked like a killer. Moreover, this young man was so cowardly. Could he protect the miss he spoke of? At this moment, a little Lolita instantly crawled out of the pool. This little Lolita quickly draped her clothes over her body. Her little face was pale and colorless, and there were faint tears in her eyes. You're a killer sent by that bad woman. I'll give you double the amount she gave you. Can you let me go? The little girl bit her lip and looked pitifully at Yun Luofeng. She was about 6 years old. She looked like she was carved out of jade. She was very cute. Her big bright eyes were like black agate, shining with a misty luster. I'm just passing by. Yun Luofeng's mouth twitched as she explained. Miss, don't believe him. That woman must have sent someone very cunning. Maybe she wants to confuse us first and then kill you. Hurry up and leave. I'll cover you. The young man waved the dagger in his hand and rushed towards Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng's face darkened. Her fingers gently clasped the young man's wrist. With a forceful flip, she threw him to the ground and stepped on his chest. Wah! The little girl was so scared that she started crying. She quickly rushed in front of the young man and hugged Yun Luofeng's leg tightly. She wanted to push her leg off the young man's body. Brother Zihao, let go of Brother Zihao. I'm begging you. As long as you let go of Brother Zihao, I'll let you do whatever you want to me. The little girl cried pitifully. Her stubborn eyes were filled with tears. She looked as if she had been wronged. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows. What do you mean? The little girl bit her lip. I heard that the person that bad woman sent to kill me is a super pervert. Not only does he like women, but he also likes virgin girls. As long as you let go of Brother Zihao, I'll go with you. You can do whatever you want to me. If Yun Luofeng continued like this, she might really become a bully. Especially since the little girl was crying so pitifully. Yun Luofeng couldn't help but put down her leg. You can go, she said coldly. I'm not here to kill you, and I'm not a pervert. I'm not interested in virgin girls. You can go now. The young man was startled. He crawled up from the ground, held the little girl's hand, and carefully followed behind Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng stopped and frowned. He coldly looked at the 2 people behind him and said, Why are you following me? The youth's delicate cheeks were stained with a touch of red. We didn't follow you. We just happened to be going the same way as you. Since she wasn't sent by that woman, she definitely wouldn't hurt them. In addition, she was quite strong, so it would be safer to follow her. Yun Luofeng ignored the two of them and continued forward. However, the two people behind her were like her little tails, always following behind her. If she quickened her pace, the two of them would quickly follow. If she stopped, they would stand behind her without moving. Yun Luofeng finally couldn't take it anymore. He turned around and said angrily, "What exactly do you want?" The little girl bit her lips tightly and carefully glanced at Yun Luofeng. I want to follow you." She spoke very carefully, afraid that she would accidentally anger Yun Luofeng. Chapter 1175. If you follow me again, don't blame me for being impolite. Yun Luofeng gave the two a warning look and walked out of the forest. The little girl stopped. When she looked down, her eyes became misty again. "Brother Zihao, what should we do? That bad woman will not let me go." The young man patted his chest confidently. "Miss, don't worry. As long as I am here, I will not let you be in danger. Brother Zihao, it's my fault for dragging you down." The little girl wiped away her tears. "If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have to hide with me. Miss, it's my responsibility to protect you. I will not let you be in danger." "Brother Zihao, I don't really understand. Why did you drag me along with her?" The little girl tilted her head, her bright eyes full of curiosity. The young man thought for a moment. "First, that woman is very powerful. She is at least a Holy Spirit practitioner. Second, did you see the jade pendant on her waist?" The little girl nodded. "I saw it. The word June is carved on it." "Miss, do you still not understand the meaning of this word? On the 7 continents, there is only one person with the surname June. That person is the Lord of the spiritual state. In the forest." Yun Luofeng looked at the two people behind him, who were not following. He slowly breathed a sigh of relief. "I've finally shaken them off." She did not know if it was her bad luck that something like this happened as soon as she arrived on the 7 continents. First, she was inexplicably treated as a killer. In the end, the two people who misunderstood her did not listen to her advice and chased after her. "Master, I think that girl is pretty." Little Mo's voice came from his soul. Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. "You already have Little White. Why are you still thinking about someone else?" "Master, what I mean is that you can marry her to Xiao Shu," Little Mo said with a smile. Yun Luofeng smiled and shook his head. "Forget it. Didn't you hear what they said? This little girl is being hunted. Before we know how strong the people who are hunting her are, it's better not to get involved with them." She was not afraid of trouble or danger, however, she was not willing to face danger for a stranger. "Master, I think we should look for the soul fruit now. Even though we got a soul fruit from the Ji clan, it's not enough to heal Little Mo's soul. We need to look for more soul fruits. Since that's the case, let's continue." Yun Luofeng moved his shoulders, and a ray of light flashed across his narrowed eyes. Outside the forest was an ancient city gate. There was a long queue at the city gate. Yun Luofeng walked to the back of the crowd and looked at the long line of people in front of him. He frowned and muttered to himself, "What happened in this city? Why are so many people heading there?" Standing in front of Yun Luofeng was a young man. When he heard Yun Luofeng's muttering, he could not help but turn around to look at her. Chapter 1176. The young man looked at her with disdain. "Where did you come from? You don't even know about the Western Continent Academy. This Western Continent Academy is used to train spirit masters. Many of the geniuses of the continent are trained by this academy. I never thought that there would be people in this world who don't know about the academy. As he said this, the young man kept shaking his head, his face full of sighs. Perhaps he did not expect that there would be people who did not understand the Western Continent Academy. Master, I feel that there is a soul fruit in this place. Yun Luo Feng, who was about to leave, suddenly heard little Mo's voice, causing her to stop in her tracks. Soul fruit, are you sure? That's right. Little Mo nodded. It should be in this Western Continent Academy. Master, in order to find the soul fruit, I can only trouble you to go to this academy. Next. At the city gate, following the sound of this old voice, the number of people in front of them gradually decreased. The examination of the Western Continent Academy was strict, so many people did not pass the examination and left with a face full of frustration. Master. Fire appeared in front of Yun Luo Feng out of thin air, his young face full of smiles. I also want to sign up, I want to go to the academy with you. Fire, Yun Luo Feng frowned, this place is different from the limitless continent, don't be too ostentatious. Moreover, in this kind of situation, you should stay in the divine grimoire space, otherwise, if someone finds out about your identity as a spirit beast, it will definitely cause unnecessary trouble. Her words were said through soul sound transmission, other than Fire, no one else could hear it. Don't worry, Master, I only ran out when I saw that no one was paying attention. Fire stretched and said, moreover, I stay in the divine grimoire space all day long, it's too boring, I want to come out and get some fresh air. Yun Luo Feng was startled, then it's up to you. Fire stuck out her tongue coquettishly. She knew that her master was unwilling to reject him. Next. Very quickly, the long line in front of them disappeared, leaving only Yun Luo Feng. This is the stone to test your level. Just put your hand on it. The old man said without raising his head. Yun Luo Feng placed his hand on the stone, and the entire stone became calm. The old man was a little surprised. He raised his head to look at Yun Luo Feng, and said unhappily, Miss, are you teasing me? The minimum requirement to enter our West Continent Academy is to be a heavenly spirit practitioner. You don't have any strength, so what are you doing here? Next. Yun Luofeng's hand pressed tightly against the stone, as if there was something inside the stone that was absorbing the spiritual power in her body, making it impossible for her to move her hand away. I've already said the next one, you can. The old man was just about to get angry, but in the next moment, he was dumbfounded. A powerful storm was set off on the girl's body. Her clothes fluttered and her hair danced in the wind. She pressed her palm against the stone, and countless strands of spiritual energy surged into the stone. However, the stone didn't seem to be full and continued to absorb Yun Luofeng's spiritual energy. What's going on? The old man was scared out of his wits. Clearly, he did not know what was going on. Why would the stone suddenly absorb Yun Luofeng's spiritual power? No. Didn't the stone fail to detect her level? In other words, she was just a normal person and not a spiritualist. But why was there such an endless stream of spiritual power in her body? Chapter 1177. There was so much spiritual energy that it could fill up the entire ocean. Genius, she's definitely a genius among geniuses. The old man suddenly realized something and cried out in surprise. Someone who possessed so much spiritual energy, if she wasn't a genius, what was she? Even if she hadn't started cultivating yet, as long as she was nurtured, she would definitely become an exceptional genius. No, he had to inform the dean about this. You've passed. Also, today's registration ends here. Everyone else can come back tomorrow. After saying this, he hurriedly left. Yun Luofeng's voice suddenly rang out, causing him to stop before he could even take a step forward. My sister wants to sign up with me. I wonder if she can get in. Yes. The old man hurriedly nodded. That won't be a problem at all. I have something to do now and have to leave. You can come to the academy to find me on the first day of school. After saying this, the old man turned and left. His figure was very hurried, and he quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Yun Luofeng glanced at the stone that had been left behind, frowned slightly, and asked via soul telepathy. Little Mo, what's going on? Little Mo pondered for a moment before replying, Master, your spiritual energy is a bit special. This broken stone can't detect your spiritual energy, but it can sense that your spiritual energy is something good. That's why it wants to devour all of your spiritual energy. Yun Luofeng's face lit up with an evil smile. According to what you've said, doesn't that mean that this stone has become a spirit? Master, there are many strange things in this world. It's not strange for a stone to have developed a mind of its own. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin as his eyes flashed with deep thought. Now that we've successfully passed the registration, we only need to wait for a few days to enter the academy. Little Mo, when the time comes, pay attention to where the fruit of the soul is. After I obtain it, I will leave the academy. After all, Yun Shao is still waiting for me. All right, Master, don't worry. Leave this matter to me. With my abilities, I will quickly find the fruit of the soul for you. West Continent Academy. In the Elder's room, a group of old men were discussing problems. At this moment, they saw a figure quickly run in from outside the door. Panting, he said, Elders, there's been an unexpected situation during today's registration. What unexpected situation? The one who spoke was a gray-robed elder. He looked at the old man in front of him and asked indifferently. The old man wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. When I was testing the applicants, I found a young girl. She doesn't seem to have any cultivation. No cultivation. This kind of thing is not a big deal, just declare her a failure. The gray-robed old man frowned and said impatiently. Chapter 1178. Elder Su Kong, you've already acquired a genius. Why don't you give this one to me? She will grow faster if she follows me. You're a doctor. What are you saying? That genius isn't a doctor. It's better if you find a student who is a doctor. Who says doctors can't take her as a student? I have my eyes on this genius. What's wrong with that? The elders argued until their faces were red. Nobody was willing to give way. The old man wiped off his cold sweat and said carefully, Elders, didn't you say that the next genius would be given to Elder Extraordinary? During the registration period, Elder Extraordinary wasn't in the school. Therefore, the other elders who had acquired geniuses had already discussed this. If they were to encounter another genius with outstanding talent, they would give it to Elder Extraordinary. Who knew that in the end, they would start arguing again? The entire elders' quarters silenced at the old man's words. All the elders' gazes were fixed on him. Their eyes were filled with anger and viciousness. The old man shuddered. He subconsciously took 2 steps back, afraid that the elders would kill him to silence him. Remember, when Extraordinary returns, you are not allowed to say anything. Su Kong glared at the old man and warned, if I find out that you've said one word, you're done for. That's right. You are not allowed to tell Extraordinary. We'll discuss who gets this genius. As for Extraordinary, we'll give the next genius to him. The elders nodded in agreement. One less person meant less competition. It was better than so many people fighting over one genius. I suggest that we let the genius choose for herself. Whoever she wants to follow will be her master. Among the crowd, the elder in red raised his hand and suggested. The others nodded in agreement, that's not a bad idea. There's no point in us arguing like this. It's better to let her decide for herself. However, the elders were all confident in themselves. They believed that they could win Yun Luofeng's heart. Nightfall. Yun Luofeng pushed open the door and walked into her room. Just as she was about to undress, someone knocked on the door. "Come in." Yun Luofeng put on his clothes, his black eyes flashing. The door was pushed open and an old man walked in. His face was filled with embarrassment as he coughed dryly and said, "Miss Yun, I am truly sorry to disturb you so late at night. I am Elder Su Kong of the Western Continent Academy. What's the matter?" Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and asked. Su Kong's expression became more and more awkward. He hurriedly took out a small box from his sleeve and handed it to Yun Luofeng. "This is my gift to you." In the Western Continent, there had always been people who gave gifts to the Academy elders, but only Yun Luofeng had made the Academy elders personally give gifts. "You don't come here for no reason. Tell me, what do you want?" Yun Luofeng glanced at the box before withdrawing his gaze. He asked with a smile that was not a smile. The void laughed twice. "Miss Yun, it's like this, I have taken a fancy to your talent, I hope that you can become my disciple." "This?" Yun Luofeng frowned. "I'm afraid I'll have to think about it." She did not directly refuse. Instead, she said that she would consider it. This made Su Kong feel relieved. As long as she was willing to consider it, it meant that he still had a chance. "I'll put down the gift. If you want to be my disciple, you can find me anytime." Chapter 1179. After saying this, Su Kong hurriedly left, worried that Yun Luofeng would return the gifts to him. After he left, the other elders of the West Continent College came to visit Yun Luofeng with gifts. They only had one goal, and that was to make Yun Luofeng their disciple. Of course, they had the same thought as Su Kong. They were afraid that Yun Luofeng would reject them and leave after throwing the gifts, leaving Yun Luofeng staring blankly at the table full of gifts. "Master, these old fellows have put in a lot of effort to win you over. These gifts are very precious, keep them well." Hearing Little Mo's voice, Yun Luofeng returned to her senses. She kept the gifts in her spatial ring and smiled. "Little Mo, help me take a look at these gifts and see which one is the most precious." After giving the order, Yun Luofeng stretched and walked lazily to the bed. She took off her clothes and lay under the warm blankets. A few days later, the registration for the West Continent College ended, and all the students headed for the college gates. From afar, Yun Luofeng saw two familiar figures in the crowd, and her eyes flashed with surprise. The two people also saw Yun Luofeng, and were stunned for a moment before walking over to her. What a coincidence! Nsiheo rubbed the back of his head. "You're here to study too?" Yun Luofeng glanced at the two people. If she had not been sure that she had shaken them off, she might have thought that they had been following her. "Miss, I haven't asked for your name. I'm really sorry for mistaking you for an assassin." The young man chuckled and tried to strike up a conversation. "Yun Luofeng." Yun Luofeng replied indifferently. The little girl's gaze was fixed on the jade pendant on Yun Luofeng's waist. She suddenly looked up at the girl in white. "Where did you get this jade pendant from?" "Someone gave it to me." This jade pendant was a meeting gift from Jun Fengling. That was why she had carried it with her. The little girl and Nsiheo looked at each other and asked, "May I know the name of the person who gave you the jade pendant?" Jun, this word was like a clap of thunder that fell into the ears of the two people. Nsiheo's emotions surged. Could it be that the person who gave her the jade pendant had a close relationship with the continent lord of Ling Continent? He had a feeling that as long as he stayed by Yun Luofeng's side, he and the young lady would be safe. Miss Yun, since we've all come to this academy, you'll be our senior sister from now on. If there's anything you need me to do, you can ask me to do it. I'll definitely do it without hesitation. This time, Nsiheo was not as thick-skinned as before. Instead, he used his relationship with West Continent College to get closer to Yun Luofeng. As long as he could keep them by his side, running errands for her was not a problem. I've seen pickup artists before, but I've never seen anyone with such lousy pickup skills. A young and tender voice came from an ancient tree next to them. Fire jumped down from the treetop and stood beside Yun Luofeng. Her face was full of smiles as she turned to look at Yun Luofeng. Elder sister, do you think I'm right? Previously, Yun Luofeng had instructed her not to call her master outside, otherwise, it would be very easy to expose Fire's identity. Miss Yun, is this your sister? Nziheo's eyes lit up. Your sister is as cute as me. Fire's small face darkened. She glared at Nziheo fiercely. If you look at me again, I'll poke your eyes blind later. Chapter 1180. Nziheo smiled awkwardly and hurriedly retracted his gaze. It was not easy for Yun Luofeng to not chase him away. He did not want to ruin their current relationship, everyone. At this moment, the old man who had helped everyone register a few days ago stood at the front. He cleared his throat and said, Our West Continent College is divided into 3 categories. One is cultivation, one is medical skills, and the last is beast taming. You can choose the category that you are more interested in later. As the old man's voice rang out, the crowd fell silent. Everyone stared at him without blinking. In addition, before the college reopens, there will be a test. Only by passing this test can you successfully enroll. I wish you good luck here. The old man smiled and said. The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone started discussing and was curious about the upcoming test. All right, you can all go and prepare. The test will be held in 3 days. The old man looked at the crowd and walked to Yun Luofeng's side. Before he left behind these words. Come with me to the elder's office. The elders want to see you. Because he had purposely lowered his voice, only Nziheo, who was standing next to Yun Luofeng, could hear what he had said. A light flashed in Nziheo's eyes. He realized that he had not followed the wrong person. Yun Luofeng definitely had the ability to protect them. However, Yun Luofeng did not know what he was thinking. She followed the old man into the elder's office. At this moment, many elders were already waiting in the elder's office. When they saw Yun Luofeng enter, their eyes lit up and they quickly walked up to her. Miss Yun, what do you think? Who do you want to be apprenticed to? Everyone's eyes were on her. There was nervousness in their eyes. Yun Luofeng stroked her chin and blinked. I've seen all of your gifts. I like all of them. If I had to choose one, it would be very difficult. Her voice made the elders even more nervous. They were afraid that she would reject them. Miss Yun, do you have a favorite? Yun Luofeng smiled. I feel that I can be apprenticed to all of you. Ever since she came to West Continent College, little Mo realized that the fruit of the soul was in the elder's office. Therefore, she had to enter the elder's chamber to find the fruit of soul. Therefore, acknowledging this group of elders as his master was the best choice. The elders were stunned by his words. They looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. All the elders are taking in the same disciple? This has never happened since ancient times. The elders of the Western Continent Academy were all in a competitive relationship, thus, they had never considered accepting a common disciple. I think this is feasible. Since none of us are willing to give up on her, then let's all be her master. Void said after a moment of silence. Looks like that's the only way. I don't want to give up on her. What about you guys? Another elder chimed in. All the elders nodded, their eyes glowing as they stared at Yun Luo Feng. Su Kong coughed dryly and explained with a smile, "Disciple, you will be our disciple from now on. Let me solemnly introduce myself to you. I am the Western Continent Academy's Elder Group's Void. The white-robed one beside me is called Emptiness, the red-robed one is Ling Hai, and the one with the protruding mouth and monkey cheeks is called Qiong Tian. As for the only female among the elders, she is Shuang. Now that you have become our disciple, even if we old fellows risk our lives, we will not let anyone bully you." Chapter 1181. Oh yes. Shuang seemed to remember something. She blinked her beautiful eyes and said, "I heard that our disciple has yet to become a cultivator. Based on her abilities, she can't participate in the Academy's assessment. Why don't we just cancel her assessment and let her advance directly?" "That's a good idea. Our disciple has such soft and tender skin, how can she go through the assessment in such a place?" "I don't agree." Ling Hai agreed with Shuang. Since Yun Luo Feng had already received their help, there was no need for her to participate in the assessment. She could directly enter the academy. There's no need. However, in the face of the elders' good intentions, Yun Luo Feng shook her head and refused. "I can enter the academy based on my own abilities. I don't need you to open any back doors for me." "Ha!" Su Kong laughed heartily. He stroked his snow-white beard and nodded in satisfaction, "You're my disciple indeed. All right, I agree to let you participate in the assessment. If you really can't do it, you can give up. I'll get someone to protect you." As the stone had not measured Yun Luofeng's level previously, these elders had assumed that she had yet to embark on the path of cultivation. Hence, they had made this decision. In the face of these elders' good intentions, Yun Luo Feng did not reject them, nor did she explain herself. She had come here for the fruit of the soul. Before that, she must conceal her powers. Otherwise, if others were to find out about her abilities, they would definitely suspect her motive for entering the academy. Before obtaining the fruit of the soul, she would never reveal her powers. "Disciple, have you decided which category to choose?" Shuang looked gently at Yun Luo Feng and spoke in a gentle tone. "On this mainland, doctors are more popular. Disciple, if you learn medicine from me, you will definitely be revered by everyone," Ling Hai said with a gentle smile. "Medicine is too boring. How can it be as interesting as taming beasts? My precious disciple, learn beast taming from me. When the time comes, I'll catch a mount for you." No. Her area of excellence is in cultivation. Hence, it's better for her to focus on cultivation. Medicine and taming beasts are not suitable for her. The elders began to argue once again. They argued until their faces were red, and they would not stop until they achieved their goal. Watching these people argue, Yun Luofeng's mouth twitched. She turned to look at the old man who had brought her here. Is this how the Academy's elders behave? The old man was a little embarrassed. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. It's true that they often get into disputes over items or geniuses. But to this extent, perhaps this is the only time. In other words, if it weren't for Yun Luo Feng, the elders wouldn't have such a dispute. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile, interrupting the old man's endless argument. You guys don't have to fight anymore. I prefer free learning. Yun Luo Feng gently stroked her chin, slightly blinking her eyes. An evil smile appeared at the corner of her lips, so, in the future classes, I may often be absent. Right now, I'm just letting you know in advance. Back then, when she was in China, she often missed classes. After all, compared to studying, she would rather study alone. Void sighed helplessly, you can do whatever you want. Who asked you to be our disciple? You don't have to go if you don't want to study. However, if you have any knowledge that you want to understand, you can look for me at any time. Chapter 1182. All right. Yun Luofeng stretched lazily and looked at the elders with his evil eyes. If there's nothing else, I'll go down and rest first. Go. Su Kong waved his hand. In this academy, if someone bullies you, come and find Master. Master will help you vent your anger. Yun Luofeng paused in his footsteps, and a warm feeling flowed through his heart. She had come to the Western Continent Academy with a purpose. Even if she had taken these people as her master, she also had her own purpose. However, these people really treated her as their disciple. When the young girl's snow-white dress disappeared, the elders retracted their gazes. The smile on their old faces gradually disappeared. What happened? Su Kong's eyes darkened as he asked coldly. Shuang looked at the few old men in front of her and shook her head helplessly. The Limitless sect has been exterminated. What? Limitless sect? Shock flashed across Ling Hai's eyes. The Limitless sect's strength doesn't seem to be inferior to our academy. Who exactly has the ability to destroy the entire Limitless sect? Shuang laughed bitterly. Have you forgotten what happened a while ago? The Limitless sect fought with a young man and sent all their experts to chase after that young man. Among them, there were also a few other great powers that interfered. Unfortunately, so many experts from so many powers were unable to do anything to that young man. In the end, the Limitless sect was even exterminated by that young man. Hiss. All the elders sucked in a breath of cold air, their eyes filled with shock. What's that young man's name again? I think he has a title. Su Kong frowned. She patted her head and raised her head to ask. I know that. When Cheong Tian heard this, he immediately jumped up and said with a smile, that young man's title is Ghost Emperor. Ghost Emperor. These two words caused Su Kong to fall into deep thought once again. After a long time, he asked, what did those powers say? Judging from your expression, it shouldn't be as simple as the Limitless sect being exterminated. The corners of Shui Ying's mouth curled into a cold smile. Those few great powers want our academy to help them deal with the Ghost Emperor. Help. Hearing this, Su Kong could not help but frown once again. Our Western Continent Academy has never cared about the grudges of the continent. Moreover, this matter was originally a few great powers who wanted to snatch the treasures of others. What face do they have to ask our academy to help? I think my elder brother is right. Su Wuang glanced at his elder brother. The Ghost Emperor isn't simple. It's best if we don't get involved. Otherwise, the Limitless sect might end up like us. Ling Hai laughed out loud. To be honest, I really admire the Ghost Emperor. If I had met him earlier, I would have tried my best to take him as my disciple. Forget it. Shuang laughed bitterly. This Ghost Emperor has too many troubles. If you accept him as your disciple, you'll have to clear away all the troubles behind him. Look at how many people on the mainland want to kill him, but he just has to go against them. He really isn't willing to suffer any losses. Exterminating the Limitless sect just like that. Weren't they afraid of incurring public anger? I think it's better for Feng to be his disciple. Feng is a woman after all, so she's definitely more sensible than the Ghost Emperor. At that moment, Shuang had no idea that the troubles behind Yun Luofeng were no less than Yun Zhao's. By the time she found out, it was already too late. She could only secretly shed tears of regret while clearing away the troubles behind her. Chapter 1183. At the thought of Yun Luo Feng, the haze in the hearts of the elders dissipated, and a proud smile appeared on their faces. We are lucky to have such a genius disciple. When the other elders find out, I wonder if they will have the urge to cry, haha. There were many elders in the West Continent Academy, but some of them did not stay in the elders' room, so they did not know about Yun Luo Feng. The West Continent Academy arranged cultivation rooms for each disciple. Even at night, they would sleep in these cultivation rooms. The cultivation rooms were ranked according to the level of the students: Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow. The Yellow room was the worst, and it was the most ordinary room. The spiritual energy in the cultivation room was not abundant enough. On the contrary, the Emperor's room was as luxurious as the house of a rich family, and the spiritual energy was so abundant that it could turn into a thick fog. Cultivating here would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. As for the ranking of the students, there were 4 lists, and these 4 lists were named according to Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow. Any new student was on the Yellow list. If they wanted to advance, they had to challenge a disciple on the Xian list. If they wanted to advance, they had to fight with a disciple on the Earth list. Other than the Yellow list, which had no restrictions, the other lists had a number of people. The Xian list could only have 50 people, the Earth list had 20 people, and the Heaven list had 10 people. Therefore, if they were challenged by a disciple on the Yellow list and failed, they could only retreat to the Yellow list and even have to exchange their cultivation rooms. If they wanted to stay on the Xian list, they had to start from the beginning and challenge a disciple on the Xian list. This was the rule of the West Continent Academy. This is your room. A disciple brought Yun Luo Feng and the others into the cultivation room and said expressionlessly, "If you can't pass the trial in 3 days, you will have to hand over this room and leave the academy." And Zihao frowned in disgust. "Isn't there a better room? This room is dirty and messy, how can my young miss stay in it?" The disciple sneered, and a sarcastic smile appeared on his face. "There is. But those rooms are not for people like you. You should stay here peacefully." A guard, a little girl who was only a few years old, and a young girl who had no cultivation at all. They actually dared to say that the room was bad. Didn't everyone come from this step? He didn't complain, so what qualifications did these people have? Be more polite. And Zihao was a little angry and turned to glare at the guard. It didn't matter if he was humiliated, but he would never allow his young miss to be humiliated. Just as Zihao was about to continue fighting for his own conditions, he saw Yun Luo Feng push open the door and slowly walk in. She sat down by herself and took out a tea set and tea leaves from her space ring. She calmly brewed a cup of tea for herself as her deep, black eyes remained calm. And Zihao's voice suddenly disappeared. Yun Luo Feng didn't even despise the current environment. As a man, what could he not tolerate? "However, miss, I've wronged you." And Zihao lowered his head and said apologetically. Even during the days when they were on the run, he had never given his young miss such a poor living environment. Even if he had to go begging, he would definitely let the young miss live a comfortable life. But now that she had come to the West Continent Academy, the young miss, who had never suffered a bit of hardship, had to live in such a dilapidated room. Chapter 1184. "It's all right, Brother Zihao," little Loli smiled cutely, "we don't care about so many things anymore. It's good enough that we have a place to stay." And Zihao was so touched that tears streamed down his face. His miss was so sensible. She knew that he had been through a lot lately and still did not forget to comfort him. Sob, and Zihao wiped his tears. "Miss, I will definitely let you live a good life in the future." While the master and servant were speaking emotionally, Yun Luo Feng had already poured herself a cup of tea. She slowly brought it to her lips and tasted it. She looked at the two of them as if she was watching a good show, and the smile in her eyes deepened. Miss Yun. And Zihao wanted to enter the room to greet Yun Luofeng, but the girl waved her hand and the door slammed shut with a bang, giving him the cold shoulder. He rubbed his nose, but his expression was not dejected at all. Miss, we are now living next door to her, so we can be considered close to her. I believe that one day, we will be able to reform her. Brother Zihao. Little Loli gently bit her lip. I think we should forget about it. She seems to think of us as trouble and doesn't want to get close to us. No. Miss, although we came to the West Continent Academy and those people can't find us for the time being, we are still in danger. If we can get her protection, it will be equivalent to setting foot on a life-saving ship. I cannot give up. Seeing Zihao's excited expression, little Loli could not bear to discourage him and did not say a word. At that moment, little Mo appeared out of thin air in front of Yun Luofeng in the room and blinked lightly. Master, you don't plan to help Arale. Arale. Yun Luofeng was startled and glanced at little Mo in confusion. The little Loli that you rejected. Don't you think she looks a lot like Arale? I don't know her name, so I used this title instead. Yun Luofeng had not noticed at first, but now that he heard little Mo's words, he realized that the little Loli did indeed look a lot like Arale. No, it's too troublesome. Yun Luofeng took a sip of tea and glanced at little Mo. You really want to help her? Have you forgotten Xiao Bai? Little Mo coughed twice. How could I forget Xiao Bai? Sigh, that's not right. There was nothing between me and Xiao Bai before this. There was nothing between us. After saying this, little Mo suddenly reacted and looked at Yun Luofeng with resentment in his eyes. Master, this little girl is rather special. Can't you smell the faint fragrance coming from her body? This fragrance doesn't belong to a normal human. It smells like some kind of spiritual fruit. Yun Luofeng was startled and became silent. His fingers tightly gripped the teacup as he asked, What do you mean by that? Master, the little tree is just a tree, but it can transform into a human. So, I suspect that Arale is a humanoid fruit. If you are in danger, someone will come and save you. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the crowd went into an uproar. God-burying mountain. It was said that it was extremely dangerous inside. Even gods would be buried in this mountain, especially at the top of the mountain. Perhaps even the Academy's elders wouldn't dare to go there. Fortunately, the Academy only wanted them to stay in the mountain for 7 days and not complete other missions. At that time, they only needed to find a quiet place to stay for 7 days. Chapter 1186. If all of you are ready, we will depart now. The elder's gaze swept across the crowd as he ordered coldly. Not long after, the noisy crowd quieted down once more. They waited for the elder to lead them to the burial god mountain, the hidden god mountain. There were 9 levels in total. The higher one went, the more powerful the spiritual beasts and traps they encountered. Normally, Holy Spirit cultivators only dared to linger around the 3rd level and below. If they accidentally stepped into the 4th level, they would die without a trace. At this moment, a group of people arrived at the hidden god mountain. They only stopped when they reached the foot of the mountain. The leader of the group was an elder. After he stopped, he turned around and said, We have arrived at the hidden god mountain. I wish you all good luck. Alright, you can enter the hidden god mountain now. In 7 days, I will come and pick you up. As he finished speaking, the elder placed his hands behind his back and slowly left. Miss Yun. And Zihao glanced at Yun Luofeng, who was standing in the crowd. He hesitated for a moment before walking up to her. He rubbed the back of his head and said with some embarrassment, "The hidden god mountain is very dangerous. Can I go with you?" What he meant was that he hoped to rely on Yun Luo Feng to safely pass this test. Of course, if he was alone, he definitely wouldn't be so thick-skinned as to beg Yun Luo Feng. Now that the miss was by his side, he definitely couldn't let the miss be in danger. Thus, he threw caution to the wind. Yun Luo Feng glanced at him, then walked towards the mountain peak. From start to finish, he didn't reply to Nziheo at all. What does she mean by this? Nziheo stared at Yun Luo Feng's back, his eyes full of curiosity. He clearly didn't understand what Yun Luo Feng's actions meant. She didn't reject us, nor did she accept us. What does she mean? The little loli blinked. Her adorable little face shone brightly under the sunlight. Her gaze was fixated on Yun Luo Feng's back the entire time. She said in a childish voice, "She didn't reject us. She probably agreed to let us follow her." Hearing this, Nziheo's heart leaped with joy. He patted his chest and swore solemnly. "Miss, don't worry. I will definitely make her accept us. As long as we have her protection, we won't be afraid of that woman anymore." The little loli sighed. Yun Luo Feng did not reject them, nor did she accept them. It would be very difficult to obtain her protection, however, she couldn't bear to disappoint Nziheo, so she could only suppress the worry in her heart. The scenery of the hidden god mountain was pleasant, and the air was filled with dense spiritual energy. Just as Yun Luo Feng entered the hidden god mountain, he heard a commotion in front of him. A scholarly-looking youth was knocked to the ground. His hair was disheveled and his fair, handsome face was filled with anger. He glared angrily at the group of people who had humiliated him as he clutched the medicinal herbs in his hand tightly. "Jing Jiang, hand over the medicinal herbs in your hands." The young man stretched out his hand towards the scholar lying on the ground and said arrogantly. The scholar hugged the herb tightly. "No, I'm going to use this herb to save my life. I can't give it to you. Besides, I was the one who found it first. Why should I give it to you? If you don't want to hand over the herbs, then die here." Chapter 1187. The young man's eyes darkened, and a fierce light flashed past his eyes. A sinister smile hung on his lips. Boom! Just as he was about to attack the scholar, a red light suddenly appeared out of nowhere and appeared in the void. It was an extremely beautiful girl around 6 or 7 years old. Behind her, it was as if 8 tails had extended out. Her eyes were blood red, and the flames on her body were endless. Fire. Yun Luo Feng frowned, looking at Fire who had run out of the divine grimoire space. A ray of light flashed past his eyes. Her gaze turned to the scholar who had fallen to the ground. If she was not wrong, Fire had seen this scholar being bullied, which was why he was so angry. Could it be that this scholar was an acquaintance of Fire? Otherwise, with Fire's personality, he would not be angry for no reason at all. "All of you, go to hell." The flames spread out, causing the entire sky to be dyed blood red. The little girl stood in the air, looking down at the group of people below. Those people didn't even have the time to scream before they were burned to ashes by the flames released by Fire. On the entire mountain path, other than Yun Luo Feng and the others, there was only the scholar who had fallen to the ground. "Little girl, thank you for saving my life." The scholar stood up from the ground, cupped his fists, and said gratefully. Fire stared at the scholar without blinking. "Why did you become like this?" The scholar was startled for a moment. He looked at Fire in confusion, as if he did not understand what she meant by that. "Miss, did you recognize the wrong person? We have never met before, so we don't know you at all." Fire's body trembled, and he took a few steps back. It was also at this time that Yun Luo Feng walked to Fire's side and gently hugged her shoulders. At this moment, she could clearly feel Fire's weak shoulders trembling non-stop, and her exquisite and cute face was deathly pale. How could you forget me? You told me to stay in the Yi family and recuperate, you would protect me, but in the end, you had to leave the Yi family temporarily because of some matters, and let your disciple take care of me instead of you, but in the end, you didn't come back. I've been waiting for you in the Yi family for so many years, how could you forget me? Yi family. Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened. This scholar was the reincarnation of the Yi clan's ancestor? In other words, the man Fire liked. Little girl, I really don't know what you're talking about. What Yi family? My name is Jing Jiang. I don't know the Yi clan that you mentioned. A trace of doubt flashed in the scholar's eyes. He felt very strange in his heart. Where did this little lunatic come from? He only knew how to say some strange things. Fire shook his head with all his might. You have his aura on you, you must be him. However, your personality is very different from him. Suddenly, the image of a cultured and refined man appeared in her mind. The man stood at the peak of the mountain, pointing out the right path for the people of the world. With a wave of his hand, he could change the color of heaven and earth and cause the sun and moon to lose their light. It was so powerful that it made the world tremble. However, the man in front of her was so weak, how could he be the person she had hidden in her heart for 1,000 years? Little girl, my fiancé is seriously ill. I have to go back to save her life. I'll come back to thank you in the future. Fiancé. Fire bit her lips tightly, her face pale white. She raised her bright eyes, and the look in her eyes was heartbreaking. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.